It's time for a GAMA Expo recap. Welcome to a special all-GAMA episode of the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast.
So today we're talking all about GAMA Expo 2025, starting with some stories from this tabletop industry trade show, followed by a talk about some of the awesome new games we got to check out. Even if you aren't in the industry, you are going to want to stick around to hear about the show. And if you are in the industry, you're going to learn why I think you should check out GAMA and the Expo.
Let's start off with introductions. I'm Sean S., and we couldn't do this without Deanna T.
Hey to all my fellow cardboard connoisseurs out there.
And her husband, Mo.
I am Mo Tuzano, the Tabletop Bellhop, your cardboard concierge, helping you make your game nights better and giving you the skinny on some of the best tabletop events.
When we record our podcasts, it's usually live Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/tabletopbellhop, and we love it when people take part and join us in the lobby, our chat room.
Now, one warning, next week we will be recording on Tuesday due to something else coming up on Wednesday, and that will be, our topic will be the Atom Gamers Retreat. Now, this episode does exist in thanks to our Patreon patrons and our awesome sponsor, Grand Gamers Guild.
You can go find detailed show notes for this episode over at tabletopbellhop.com/episode 267. That's 267. Wherever you're listening to this, you're going to see our show notes. There's going to be links. Those may be affiliate links, which cost you nothing extra to use, but help support us.
The Tabletop Bellhop team is here to answer your gaming and game night questions. We are the Dear Abby for gamers, and tonight we're answering some questions we've been asked multiple times since Mo and Dee got back from Louisville, Kentucky, where they attended GAMA Expo 2025 as hosted media.
So the first question that we get asked a lot is, what is the GAMA Expo, and what's the difference between the GAMA Expo and GAMA, since people tend to use the term GAMA interchangeably with the show and the organization? Well, GAMA is the Game Manufacturers Association, which is a trade organization for the tabletop gaming industry that covers all facets of the industry, including manufacturing, shipping, distribution, publishing, game creation, retail, and so on. Now, the arm of GAMA, or the head of GAMA we belong to, is the events and media. And yes, the Tabletop Bellhop is a voting member of GAMA. Now, what GAMA does is provide tools and resources for people in the gaming industry, and is something you seriously should check out if you are involved in gaming at a level above just playing games.
So what Mo just was talking about, that's GAMA, the trade organization. Well, GAMA Expo is the yearly trade show that's put on by GAMA, where members from all the different branches get together to learn new things, hear about new games and new releases, network, and conduct business. This is very much a business-to-business show.
While you may hear people talking about GAMA Expo like a convention, mentioning it alongside Origins, Gen Con, or PAX, it is not a gaming convention. It is very much a trade show, and it is not open to the public. Now, last year, we did a detailed breakdown of exactly what GAMA is and what members can gain from going to GAMA Expo. This was episode 236, and we don't want to waste your time repeating all of it here. I strongly encourage everyone to check out that episode out and learn more about this organization and why we feel everyone should in the industry should be part of it, and why GAMA Expo is worth attending.
And no, GAMA is not paying us to show for this. It just, honestly, we joined 2 years ago and have found it very worthwhile in a number of different ways. Now, as for GAMA Expo, we love the show. Yeah, it was the highlight of the year last year. It was our first time attending last year, and it was just as good this year, both as a couple of gamers who just love games and as tabletop content creators and people, and more importantly this year, as people who host public play events, which is something I've gotten back into with our Walkerville game nights. And I had some fascinating conversations with the events side of GAMA and events members. Now, since getting back, we have also been asked many times, how was your trip? What was the best part? What was the biggest surprise? What game were you excited about? What publisher treated you the best? Whatever. So because there's so many different questions, what I think I wanted to do for this episode is just tell you some stories from GAMA Expo 2025, which I hope will answer all of those questions. as well as highlight why we enjoy it so much and why we think everyone who can should attend this show. Now we're going to start up with our hotel stay, where we stayed. The drive down was great. That's all I'm going to say. And last year, though, as host of media, they did put us in a nearby hotel. I'm not going to call it the hotel name, but it wasn't great. It was a long walk from where some of the activities were happening. And we weren't with everyone else, which is the part that sucked the most, because most of the people attending the con were at a place called the Galt House, which was a really fancy hotel right on the Ohio River. Well, this year we were at the Galt House, and it was fantastic. It is a beautiful hotel, lots of people everywhere, and it's just one of those when you go to a convention and there's gamers everywhere, and you just feel at home. In addition, our room was massive. I don't know how to describe this other than to say that our room had a hallway. It was bigger than our first 2 apartments. So thank you for putting us up there. But the best part was the fact we were there with everyone else. So in the morning when you woke up, there were gamers. And when you were done gaming, there were lots of people doing after hours gaming. And it just, you never felt like you left the con. Whereas at the other hotel, it was kind of like, oh, the day's done. We go to the other hotel. And then we have to go find everyone in the morning.
Yeah, my brother's local. He lives in Louisville, and he's like, "Oh, the Galt House. You want to stay there? It's a nice place. It's a historic building. It's a really cool hotel." It was nice staying on site. The ground floor lobby area of the Galt House, it's pretty sprawling. There's tons of tables and couches. That ended up being like an impromptu gaming hall. Mm-hmm. I have been at conventions where less games were being played than were being played in that lobby. At any given time, you could walk through there and there was just people everywhere playing games and tons of folks sitting around and having interesting conversations, right? So having an excuse to walk through that space on our way home each night was just great. Some events were held at the Galt House, but this year, most of the events were at the KICC. That's the Kentucky International Convention Center, which is about 2 blocks away. Yeah. It's still a heck of a lot of walking. I warn you, if you're thinking of attending, comfy shoes, lots and lots of walking.
Yeah, your Fitbit's got a workout. I think it was 20,000 steps you were mentioning for some days.
Some days, yeah. So my average for the week, okay, was 16,000 steps. Now we didn't get there till Wednesday, I think it was. So you gotta account for that, and the 2 days driving where mostly I just sat in the car for 6-7 hours. So when you average all that out, it was a lot of steps.
We came in Saturday. The event started Sunday, and we left, and it finished Thursday, and then we hung around Friday to visit with my brother. But still. My Fitbit thought it was kidnapped. It's
a lot of walking. So the first amusing story I have from GAMA Expo is something that at the time felt very innocuous and normal, but looking back on it, it's kind of weird and creepy. So we check into the Galt House, we check our bags, and we get in the elevator to go down, and we're like, we're going to go for dinner. A place that was strongly recommended for us before called Parlor Pizza. Check it out if you're in Louisville. Really good place. And we're in the elevator, and this woman looks us up and down. And you know what? Gamers have a look. We look like gamers. It was like, oh, are you here for the con? And we're like, yeah, we are. And like, do you have dinner plans? We're like, yeah, we're about to go to Parlor Pizza. You want to come with us? She's like, sure. So we go out, we go to the van, and this younger woman gets in our van, and we drive her across town to a pizza place. Well, that woman is Sam. Deanna, do you remember what retail store she was repping?
She is the owner of Quest Realm from down in Arizona, Lake Havasu City. I'm probably saying that wrong. Lake Havasu City, to be precise.
Hey, you got the game store. That's even better. So Quest Realm. So she's the owner of Quest Realm. We did go to Parlor and we chatted with Sam. And Sam, one of the things that's always fascinating about GAMA, and I found this last year, is how much we have to offer retailers and retailers have to offer us. One of the things I kind of don't like about GAMA as an organization is it feels like a hydra with multiple heads, and the heads don't talk to each other often enough. Whereas what I want to do is braid the heads and get them to all work together. And this is a good example of that. Is we had a great conversation with Sam, and it ended up that a publisher was actually sitting behind us and kind of overlooking our conversation, and we met them later. So yeah, our first night of GAMA, we kidnapped a woman and brought her for pizza.
Yeah, it was a bit dubious. I have to say, if it had been me and I had gotten downstairs and y'all had been like, now get in this van, I would have been like, you know what? I see pizza right over there. I can take a walk. I'm good. No, we had a really nice time. It was a great start to the con. Like we just sat there, we lingered and had conversation. Yes. And Sam told us interesting stories about how she got into retail. Like, she started off as an artist with a workshop space and then started using the tables after hours as a gaming area. And then people were asking her to start getting in certain games. Right. She was already a business, so she had business license, which she started ordering in games. And then that turned into stocking games, which turned into just being a straight up game store, which is, it's an interesting story, right? And she was talking about all the ways that she works to optimize every inch of her tiny 750 square foot space. And as Mo said, I do think we have a lot to share with sitting and talking with retailers. I mean, we all have a common love of games, and I can't think of any solid examples right now. But every time I sit down and end up having a conversation with a retailer, we tell each other things that are useful to each other.
Yes.
It's unlikely I'm going to be in Arizona anytime soon, but like, I really dig making connections like this and learning how people got into the hobby, how they got into gaming as a job, etc. It's fun.
So registration was the next morning. It was super quick, no lines, just scan a QR code, get your badge. Then you stop at the desk across the way to get a lanyard. One of the things they started last year that I think is fantastic is they now have badge ribbons for what part of GAMA you're from. So it's easy to tell if someone's a retailer, or if they're a warehouser, or if they're in distribution, or they're a manufacturer, and so on. In addition, for the creatives, they had colored wristbands to say if you were an artist, if you were a game designer, if you were a play tester, etc., which I thought was pretty cool. They also set up a booth eventually. The Board Gamers GAY group also had their usual selection of badges, including your ally badges and so on, and additional badges for a price, which raises money for that group.
If they also had something for content creators that it was specifically for the Mixer on Sunday night, and it was for if you were looking to get a game published, if you're looking for work, or if you're looking to hire. They had different colored bracelets so people could go up and chat with each other.
That's cool.
I thought that was neat. Yeah.
That is a nice touch. So right after I got my badge, I ran into, honestly, I want to call him the nicest man in gaming, a fantastic person, Amon Anderson, who is just a bundle of joy and so excited about the hobby. For people who don't know him, he is the designer of Gnome Hollow, is what he's most famous for. Before that, it was Levity Games, where he did things like make stickers for board game components on Etsy. Amon is a very busy person who does a lot of inside work in the industry. And at the time, he was talking to Matt Williams from Envyborn Games. And we all shook hands because we know Matt from reviewing his games, Sirens and Confusing Lands and some of their other stuff. Well, while I'm there talking and I'm shaking hands and we're hugging each other, Amon suddenly stops, leans down, and opens up his bag. And inside are all these white zippered bags. I don't even know. There was some kind of tote bag that were something about flying on an airplane. And he hands one to Matt. Well, it ends up, it is the first ever prototype for Hercules and the 12 Labors. I got to see it at the same time as the game designer for the first time. And just watching his reaction, holding the cards in his hand at the first time was just amazing. And this game looks fantastic. It's a solo dice game. And what it does, it uses tarot-sized cards, and you can put them together interesting ways, like the Phoenix takes 3 cards. So that was just very cool to see. And it was great to run into Matt and Amon.
I saw it out on a table later. Maybe it was during the media preview. At some point, I saw it out on a table, and it's pretty. And I am kind of excited about it. But I'm sad I wasn't there for this moment.
And to be honest, the pictures I shared on that's actually darker than they wanted. And Amon is going to lighten them up, which honestly seems to be a thing with Envyborn. When we reviewed Mind Your Business was also an issue. But this was the first time I saw a man handing out something to a publisher. 10 minutes later, I go to the washroom. I come back out. And I see Amon sitting down with showing off one of his games, and another publisher, another designer walks up, and he's like, "Oh, here's a bag." I'm like, "What?" And then, honestly, for the next 5 days, every time I saw Amon, he was handing a bag off to someone. I actually took him aside and I said, "What the heck, dude?" He's like, "Yeah, I do a lot of design work and a lot of art for a lot of people." It's just like, wow.
And that backpack was either extra dimensional or he was refilling it, back at his hotel room, because like it was like a Mary Poppins magical carpet bag, just an unending stream of goodies he kept pulling out from there and handing off.
See, and you can tell we're podcasters and not, TikTokers or reelers, because there isn't video of Amon pulling things out of his bag forever and ever and ever on loop.
Oh, there should be though. We should get better at that. So at this point, like there's nothing official going on, just badge registrations open, and people were already setting up and playing in the hallways of the Galt House. Like the thing with the Galt House is this really long hallway. And if you're going outside anywhere, you can walk down that hallway and go to back exit. So like it's just one of the areas you're going to walk through many times. So that was great because we ran into a ton of people we knew. Because GAMA Expo is awesome for meeting and getting to know people. And there were lots of good, good to see you and glad you're back. As long as, hey, wait a minute, aren't you Mo? Aren't you the Tabletop Bellhop? I follow you on the internet.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was cool is how many people came up to us and said, "Hey, I'm here because you talked about GAMA Expo last year."
Yeah, that was awesome.
It happened like maybe 5 times over the course of the show. So it's not like it was dozens and dozens of people coming up, but still, like, even it just happening once floored me. It is great to know that people were there having an awesome experience because of something they heard on our podcast.
Which is one of the reasons we wanted to make sure to get this episode out here in between our various trips. Now, one of the coolest things GAMA does for their creative arm, this is a newer arm of GAMA, head, arm, whatever, faction within GAMA, is the creative, and they're really pushing that to grow. And last year they did this cool thing. They did this designer day, but it was their first time doing it. Well, what they did this time is they gave designers and creators a space to play test games. Now, last year it was one day. This year, one day there was a huge room filled with games. Then every night during the open gaming sessions from 8 to 11 p.m., one of the 3 rooms you could play games in was a playtesting room. It was as big as the RPG room. That's what we did the first night. After all the meet and greets, is we went up and hung out in the playtesting room pretty much all night. We played demos of never before seen games, as well as checking out and looking at a lot more. One memorable session was with Susan Landry, who was showing off and looking for feedback on our game Geozzle. That's Geozzle. Or I don't know. It's supposed to rhyme with puzzle. Which had some, like, it was a game based on compass roses. So it had arrows and tails and different shapes up to 4 pointing different ways. And there was ways you could put them onto this notch board. And it was really neat. It was eye-catching. The first rules she taught were interesting, which had to do with rolling a die to figure out how many points were on your arrow and placing it, and ways to remove your opponent's arrows, and playing this like area majority game. That was cool. And then she pointed out that she's got another version where you place meeples if you make squares. It was kind of like an advanced version of that dots and squares game. And then she showed us another version that was like a roll and move. And then she showed us a puzzle, and she just kept showing all these different things. And our main feedback to her was, come up with what you think is your best game and present that. And all this other stuff can be add-ons or expansions or variants to play. But I've got to say, of all the games I saw, that was very eye-catching, and I loved the pieces, the components in it. And I got to say, it was a good, positive experience for all of us. And I loved meeting with a designer who wasn't holding their game too close to their chest and was very open to feedback.
What I looked at in the open gaming hall was such a mixed bag. And I don't mean people that were and were not open to feedback. I just mean it was a lot of almost finished games that would be heading to Kickstarter soon. And I saw games that were a year or 2 out for development. Like, I got to take a look at Vauxhall Garden, which is from Heather Dixon, the designer of Apistocracy. I didn't demo it. Like, I just got an overview, and she's showing it to me. And to me, I'm like, yeah, this looks and sounds like a cohesive, complete game. I'm sold. I want to play this. And then she tells me, yeah, we're still playtesting it. And I think it might hit Kickstarter in 2027. And
like, wow.
Surprise, we're not as ready as you think. But, again, that's also great, because a lot of people, I think, get the impression of their game that, oh, this is great, this is good, but they have not done the playtesting legwork. They have not done the blind playtesting that we harp on about so very much on this show. And so it feels good to them because it's their baby, but they haven't got the evidence to prove that it really can stand on its own outside of there. So, to think someone is like, yeah, this game is good, but we want to play test it for another 2 years. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally agree. And again, game designers, join GAMA, go seriously. Like, this is, you're getting 4 days of free play testing. Like, that's ridiculous. Hours a day, designers, publishers, retailers. That's another big bit. These aren't just gamers playing your games. When you get a retailer to look at your game and say, hey, I can't sell this because of this, that is invaluable. And it's not something I can provide to as a playtester myself, because I don't own a store. Again, braiding the heads together to me is something I think we need to be better at. Now, I know this is a tabletop show, but you all know I love food. I already called out pizza. I'm not going to talk about every meal we had. I've done that in the past. Deanna gets mad at me. I'm just going to quickly recommend the Troll Pub under the bridge for the best Kentucky hot brown I've had so far. Don't let the well-hidden and honestly beat-up looking front door scare you. This is a great place. Once you know where it is, you can't miss it because of the giant troll. If you check my social medias, you can see Deanna posing with the trolls.
How can it's perfect thematically. The food was good and they had a great beer selection, and it's just around the corner. Like it's a win.
Yep.
All right. Well, if you are like us and talk about games online, one of the things you can't miss at GAMA Expo is the Media First Look event. Here, publishers show off their new hotness. Often games that are coming out later in the year at Gen Con or even Essen. Sometimes stuff that won't even be out until next year.
Well, this year we screwed up. Here's a pro tip for people. Here's a story. I was sick. I was very sick before going to GAMA. I was diagnosed with pneumonia in one lung. We weren't even sure if we were going to go. I finished my last dose of antibiotics the day we got to Kentucky, which was technically the day before the con started. So we went in with no plan, which is a total mistake. So this particular event, I'm going to get the numbers wrong. Deanna's better at numbers than I am. I'm going to say there were 55 publishers showing off games. And I think there were 65 tables, somewhere around there. I may be way off.
I think it was 67.
67. Wow. See, so it was even worse. We didn't do the math, but like you only had an hour and a half. So 90 minutes to hit 67 tables if you want to see everything. It's just not possible, especially because the people showing off these games are very excited and want to give you demos and talk to you and hold you at their table as long as possible. So normally we have a plan. If you get the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming newsletter, I kind of mentioned this plan. Normally what we'll do is we'll go in the week before and we'll note down what games we're excited about. Well, we did that part and listen to our last episode and you can hear all about what we were all hyped about for GAMA Expo. But what we didn't do is then put that in a spreadsheet and sort it by table number so that we can then, in an organized way, go through the thing. We messed up. And what happened was I knew we wanted to see 25th century games. I didn't know where they were supposed to be. So I spent way too long wandering, trying to find 25th century games. Well, it ends up the rep was running late, didn't come into the con until the exhibit hall was open. So I wasted way too long. Whereas if I had had a numbered list, I would have went, oh, that table's empty. I guess 25th century's not here. Where do we go next?
Yeah, when we had done our pre-show hype episode, there was 3 games from 25th Century Games that I wanted to see. And I kept going, where are they? I've got to find them. And then Mo decided to stop and talk to Modifius about their new RPG for like 20 minutes, which is great, but we're not doing RPG content. I'm like, hey, come on, keep walking.
Sorry, that was Urban Shadows by Magpie Games.
Yes. I don't know. In the past, we've walked into the media hall and I prep beforehand and I have a list of all the exhibitors and I know the numbers of the booths and I've already looked up the games online and figured which ones aren't for us and which ones are not miss. And I make a checklist by booth number of who we need to see. And this year we did none of that. And like Mo said, it was a mess. We wandered very inefficiently. And I will say in the past, certain people may have teased me that my prep was overkill. And I'm just going to let it rest there.
So to be fair, for people who do or don't know, the GAMA Expo Media First event and the Origins Media First event are very, very different. Now, I have not been to GAMA Expo, but everything they are describing makes it nice and ordered with things like table numbers. Whereas our last experience at the Origins Media First event was kind of horrible because everyone just grabbed a table somewhere. So no matter how much planning you did, you could have a complete list of every game and publisher that you wanted to see, but good luck trying to find them. So, yes, being organized at GAMA Expo makes a lot of sense. Being over-organized at Origins, so far at least, has not made as much sense.
Fair.
So yeah, like here's the tip: don't do what we do. Right, go through the info on who will be presenting, where long before the event. Mark off who you want to talk to, who you might want to talk to. Sort them all by table number. Now the other thing, here's a pro tip. For any con that has an exhibit hall or a number of tables or a bunch of things to see in one room, I don't want to share this with too many people, but you need to start at the back. Soon as you enter the hall, you know, the big rush at Gen Con, the big rush at Origins when the hall first opens, don't go to the booths at the front. Everyone's going to be trying to go to the booths at the front. They're going to be the busiest booths. You're not going to get to talk to anyone. You're not going to see. You're just going to be, bouncing up against people. Go to the far back corner. That way you avoid the rush of people. No one heads to the back first. This is awesome. We did that. We went to the back and we got to learn all about castle risers. Everyone else was up at the top getting each other's way, and we got a full demo before we moved on to the next booth. So that is the thing. Start at the back, do your list in reverse order. Hit all your musts, then go back to your wants, and then wander if you see anything else. Don't do what we did and just expect to show up and wander around and see what's neat.
And just remember that if everybody follows that advice, it's just as bad as everyone rushing into the front. So gauge things. You know, if people are rushing to the front, rush to the back. If people are rushing to the back, hang out in the front.
If that fills up, go for the middle booth, right in the center of the room. Do a spiral out from there.
You go. The thing I did notice is we ran for the back, and the people in the back didn't expect it. We're like, whoa, we thought we had a couple minutes to finish getting set up. And that's happened with at Origins before, too. So your mileage
there was a
may
particular
vary.
publisher we had planned to meet with who we actually missed because they were not ready when the doors opened. As for what we saw at the media preview event, stay tuned because we're going to be talking about the games of GAMA Expo later in a second segment. We're going to break those out because I'm hoping the two different YouTube videos eventually. But I will call out some highlights. Castle Raiders was cool. Lunar Skyline, awesome. That's the wrong name. What is the game from David Beck? Luthier. Luthier looks so good. And Throne was one I wasn't expecting. A Place for All My Books is like the game for us. There's a follow-up to this game is Killer based on The Thing. Diatoms look great. And man, was Kim from Good Games Publishing ever excited to show us 12 Rivers. Do you have anything you thought was a highlight from the media first look? Very bad timing.
No, I was just bummed out that we saw so few. Actually, I mean, we'll talk about it later. A Place for All My Books. It was just bang on.
So the next cool thing we did.
Bashing anything. There was a couple we went and looked at, and I was like, yeah, no, not for me. Right?
Definitely.
And I think we only really, for an in-depth look, only looked at maybe 9 games.
Yeah.
And that is, we usually manage to fit in more. So, I was disappointed. Next time I'll be more organized.
So another cool thing we got to do this year was Keymaster Games invited us to a Parks breakfast. That was our chance to see the new edition of Parks and play through a game. The game was great. Breakfast was good. It was fine. It was nice to have breakfast provided. It meant we didn't have to get up extra early to eat before we attended. We have not played Parks, so that was kind of interesting. I will say the new edition of Parks made me badly want it. Parks is a very family weight game. This definitely added some depth and strategy to the game that wasn't in the original. And I actually kind of taught the game at Adam. I at least set it up for a group of people and gave them an overview. So it was a fun morning. Got to interact with some other content creators, including some folks from Meeple Mountain. So that was cool, and play a game with them. And it was just like a nice, I don't know, it was comfy, right? Like it was a nice way to start the day. And I got to say, for anyone, again, our games episodes, our game talks later, the new version of Parks is definitely worth picking up, probably even if you have the original.
It was just a really nice way to start the day. Like, I love that we got to sit down and play through a full game. So much of what we do at GAMA Expo is short demos. It was just delightful to sit down and actually play a full game. And it didn't hurt that the game was a totally enjoyable one. But for me, it set a tone for the rest of my day. Like, I was just in a good headspace to start my day.
Yeah, so the new version is actually Parks 2nd Edition. They haven't changed it too much, and it's gone up from 59 parks to 63 parks in the new game, as well as other additional content and tweaks and art aspects.
It is currently features every existing national park in the U.S. And when you purchase the game, a portion of the proceeds do go to parks, the national parks, which is kind of cool. Now, if you attend GAMA, I know a lot of people skip this, but I strongly feel you should go to the keynote speech, despite being really early in the morning. Last year's was about catching people's attention with ever-shortening attention spans. This year's was by Dr. Liz Wilson from Australia. She had a very charming accent. Was all about diversity and accessibility, which was planned ahead of time and felt very well timed to me.
Yeah, so they were talking about diversity and accessibility, and they asked everyone to scan a QR code and do a little survey and check off how many labels would apply to them. And I didn't check off disabled. Like, I honestly didn't even think of it, right? However, my hearing is impaired. I need a hearing aid, and I've been saving up to get one because it's bleeping expensive. My vision is impaired. I'm waiting for cataract surgery for my left eye, and in the meantime, I don't have a match set, so my vision is poor. I have social anxiety. Some settings are going to make me really uncomfortable. I also fit in the LGBTQ plus bucket, and that's not something I talk about. And I'm happily married, so no one's assuming anything there. So you've got the obvious label that everyone can see. I'm a woman, which is a gender minority in a lot of settings, but then there are all the invisible labels. And I'm not saying this to talk about me, but it was a light bulb moment because I suspect many people are walking around with invisible labels. And like, how do we make things easy and accessible for everyone? How do we make gaming spaces inviting and welcoming? Because so much of what is holding people back isn't readily obvious. Like, I might walk into a place and say, yeah, I'm not having a good time here, I'm going to leave. And you're going to think, oh, girls, they don't like gaming. I'm like, no, the lighting here just sucks, guys. You're turning people off of public play and turning them away from open gaming spaces without even realizing it. Aaron, it got me thinking. And yeah, if you're at GAMA Expo, attend the keynote speech. It's worth your time.
Now, I do think GAMA is putting up all of this on YouTube, as far as I know. I know a lot of the presentations were, but I think the keynote was recorded as well. If I can figure that out before we send out the show notes, I'll drop a link there.
To be brutally honest, I preferred the show note from last year. I found it had more useful pieces of information that went in my head and went light bulb moments, right? But this was still good, and it's worth your time.
Yep. So another interesting thing that happened, a fun thing, this was at one of the gaming nights, was I ran into the folk that designed Estate. This is the fantasy kingdom building game from Grodd Games that we previewed last year. I think it actually might be our last preview. See, I still have our prototype copy. I have had it since we did the review, and I've sent emails to them saying, they said, I want you to send it on. I'm like, okay, who am I sending it on to? And they're like, here. And I'm like, oh, okay, they're in the States. It's going to cost this much. And they're like, no, I'll hold on to it. And I'm like, okay, I'm holding on to it. They're like, oh, we found someone in Canada. I'm like, okay, what's the address? I'll ship it out. Oh, they already decided they're not going to review the game. And it's gone back and forth. And I was starting to think they were ghosting me because I sent a couple emails saying, okay, still got it. Every time I go through my inbox and try to get to inbox 0, it's still sitting there in my Gmail. And I'm like, okay, last time I wrote him was 3 months ago. Let's write him again. And I'd be like, hey, do you want me to do something with it? So I ran into the awesome folks at Grodd Games, and we had a conversation about my preview copy, which I'm still holding on to for them. They still don't quite know what they want me to do with it because mainly the game has changed a lot. So I also got a chance to see the changes made. And what was awesome for me to see is a lot of the changes were, not a lot, some of the changes were direct result of the feedback we provided in our review. Though I got to admit, they're still insisting on the castle over the deck. That was something I found a little annoying. So yes, I still have the review copy or preview copy of the game, and no, they haven't decided what they want me to do with it. But we had a really good interaction because of that.
Oh, that's great. I didn't even know you talked with them. I missed out on that one. I was feeling vaguely guilty that we still have their games. So, and it's cool to know that they made changes. I'm looking forward to seeing what the finished version looks like.
Which actually, that's something I don't know if you want to talk about or I want to talk about it, but Deanna and I did not stick together during this con. We spent a lot of time apart because we actually hate each other. No, there's just so much to do and so much to see. I don't know if you want to take this.
So if we were going to have a meeting with the publisher, it was good for us to be together. Otherwise, Like, there's just too much. There's too much going on. Like, game night, there's so many tables of games to be played. I don't want to sit and play at the same table as Mo. Then we're only experiencing the same games. Now, to be honest, sometimes there were things that he was like, hey, you got to make sure you go check out that. And I'm like, hey, you got to make sure you go check out that. But yeah, as Cat Stacker is saying, it was divide and conquer. And I was very thankful that there's two of us. Also, like, I feel weird when I'm just following him around that people assume I'm his plus one, which is no fun sometimes. I get it's a different interaction that I get when I'm on my own. This is sad but true anywhere you go, right? So there's that too. And it's partially a me problem, but my self-confidence is better when I'm not just following Mo around, because I'm taking the easy route. I'm just following Mo around, doing whatever and saying yep. And when I go off on my own, I have to be actively engaged.
There's also a big difference, again, between GAMA Expo and Origins, whereas Origins, because most of what you guys are doing is meeting with publishers and doing the one-on-ones, you two are mostly going off and, collecting the games that we need to collect and making, shaking hands and meeting the game developers, whereas I'm the one who's off wandering off, checking out the different other rooms and taking pictures of everything, because just following you guys around, I could take a couple of pictures at a game, and then 20 minutes before we get to the next booth to take another couple of pictures. It's not really worth my time to be there doing that. And it's not like I was never there. I met with some publishers with you guys as well, but there was a different kind of divide and conquer at Origins versus GAMA because of those, the different kinds of content presented.
I mean, going way back, I used to separate from Mo at Origins and go play in competitive tournaments, but I never have time for that anymore. I'm like, I'm going to meet with everyone and then I'm going to find time to play some games, and I never do.
So we mentioned a couple times open game nights, right? So one of the most fun parts of GAMA Expo is attending the nightly open game nights. Make sure you find time to do this. This year they ran from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. every night, and then kind of exploded out into the hallways and public spaces at the Galt House and back in people's hotel rooms. And from what I understand, some of the other nearby hotels, the lobbies also had games going on. Pretty much every publisher at GAMA Expo at some point is going to rent a table, because they're actually paying to have this space and show off their latest games. This is the part of the con where you actually a trade show where you actually get to sit down and play games, often full games. Now, again, games, we're going to talk about individual games later, but for those of you who aren't going to stick around or don't want to listen to the other half of the show, some highlights for me were getting to play the new Marvel Multiverse RPG under Matt Forbeck, the game's designer. Learning Emerald Skulls, which is a really neat kind of betting dice game. Losing a game of the latest Ascension set, which called Legends, by 2 points against someone who had played the game over 50 times. Having an awesome gentleman, the best dressed man at GAMA, teach me Compile. There were just some great moments had while playing games, and just in-game moments were awesome. Discovering a super simple card game from a couple soccer moms was another notable experience.
Yeah, that was during the opening welcoming reception. We ended up sitting down and playing a game called Baroom, and it was one of the surprises of the expo for us. I had a blast during the open gaming nights. I don't know, the overall vibe is just fun and welcoming, and I got to try out so many great games. I will quickly highlight some, even though we're going to be talking about them later. T-Witches was every bit as cool as I thought it would be. I tried a game called, I think it's Goats and Goblins, but it might be Goblins and Goats. I could be getting that wrong, which is a very simple push your luck card game that is not my kind of thing, and I loved it. And the other one is the follow-up to Distilled from Paverson Games, Luthier. Oh, so good. I was sad that we didn't get to play a full game. I cannot wait until I get to sit down and play a full game of that. I'm going to highlight something that was true at last year's event as well as this year. Every game I sat down, I was not the only woman at the table. And I don't know how to say this. It's just, it's good. It's nice to see so many women in the gaming space. It makes me happy.
Yeah, similar to last year, the diversity at this trading event is fantastic. Not just women, but also trans and people presenting different ways. disabled folks. GAMA did a lot to make the convention hall more accessible this year, but I'll be talking about that later. Just the diversity at every table I sat at was fantastic. Now, yes, the games are fun. And there is something I do feel I need to call out about GAMA Expo. And I think a lot of people don't realize this about GAMA Expo unless they've attended. And even people who have attended, it's work. This is a trade show. We are there to network and interact with people and possibly even sign deals. That's what people are there to do. It is a lot of work and long days. Like, as I mentioned, gaming ends at 11 officially, but often spills out into the hallways and the pubs. And then there's just, chilling and hanging out and sharing drinks and talking. And there are after parties. This is something I missed last year at GAMA. Of course, there are after parties, but it just didn't click in. But there are after parties there. I will leave those to discover on your own and won't mention any of the ones I attended. The problem with this is that events start at 7, 8 a.m. in the morning. And you've got to eat breakfast before you do. At least you should. There's not a lot of time for sleep there, and you should sleep. We had some very late nights and some very early mornings and got very little sleep. That said, it was worth it. But I think next year we got to schedule things a little bit better to get a few more hours sleep in.
It was true last year as well. And at least this time I knew what I was getting into. You say we're going to sleep more, but I don't know where it fits. Like, it's just really long days. And that's without doing anything optional, with just doing all the scheduled events. It's long days, it's tons of walking, it's tons of interacting with other people. So it's basically exhausting on every level. Like, I'm just...
And to be fair,
we talked about how cool our hotel room was. It didn't matter because I don't think I spent 10 minutes in it with my eyes open.
And to be fair, I mean, that is kind of what trade shows tend to be. I've done a lot of trade shows on the back end as a technician and watched things going on. And that second and third day of a trade show, you would see people walking in looking like zombies because they need to get everything done. And they need to meet all the people and do all the things and drink all the meetings afterwards. And they just burn themselves out because they're going to go stumble into an airport and sleep on the way home and hopefully for a day or two after that.
I think what's staggeringly different is the difference from when we attend Origins. When we attend Origins, we sleep. The convention hall doesn't open till 10 a.m., right? And unless you want to get up early and play some games or meet with people, it's just much more relaxed. So literally things scheduled events, not that you're expected to attend because you kind of get to set your own schedule, but from 8 in the morning till 11 at night, there is something going on. I think what we need to do is instead of long dinners, have something small and fit in a midday nap. That might actually work better because there is a little period there for 3 hours where there's actually nothing scheduled going on.
It's not 3 hours, though.
I thought it was from 3 till 6. Is it 4 till 6?
Yeah, it's 2.
4 till 6. Oh, it takes 2 hours. The problem was everything ran over. You kept talking to people. You kept doing. By the time you finished talking and finally got out of the convention center and found somewhere to eat. Anyway, that's
not accurate at all. Actually, I think it was from 6 until 8 because game night started at 8.
6 till 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
there
things like there were seminars that started at 5 and ran till 6. So 6 to 8 was
6 till 8.
When you could have decided to eat a Cliff Bar and take a nap. Yeah.
6 till 8. Sorry. So we've talked about all the night stuff, right? What we haven't talked about is the morning events. What actually happens at 8 a.m. Well, GAMA Expo has an interesting balance to me, and this is something I kind of put together this year that I don't think we mentioned last year. Is it's kind of like you go to theory, you go to class in the morning, you go attend sessions and panels and learn things. There's tons of them. There's tons of panels and presentations covering all the different arms of GAMA. And yes, some are specific to certain arms of GAMA, heads of GAMA. Others are open to everyone and so on. There's a huge number of things you can go to. Well, that's where you go to learn your theory. And then there's game night at night, which is your practical, where you can now go play and try all the stuff you talked about in the morning, especially when you attend like a publisher premiere presentation, like here's our hot new games. Oh, cool. I make notes on what seems really cool. And I if you follow me on Blue Sky, I actually live skeeted. I don't know what's term we're using for Blue Sky. I've heard skeeted. Live skeeted the ones I was able to attend. And then you go to the game night and you get to play it, which is actually really awesome. The other thing that's happening in the mornings is this is the time when most people book meetings. For us, this meant meeting with publishers and distributors, but other folks are off, pitching games to publishers, meetings about distribution, trying to find a new manufacturer, and so on. So go to class in the morning, learn stuff, then go to game night to actually touch and play with the stuff, sort of.
Yeah, I was amused the first time you framed it that way. Theory in the morning, practice at night. I'm like, oh, that's good. The panels are well worth attending. Like this is totally worth bothering to get out of bed for, guys.
So between the two of us, we actually attended a lot of panels. We split the team, right? We talked about it earlier, how we often split up. This was the one point where we do split the team, and we did the same thing at Origins, and we did the same thing at GAMA last year that worked, because I recommend if you are going to GAMA Expo with a team, split your team, because it is frustrating how many cool, interesting things are at the same time. Plus, we had the problem of having to miss some things because we had meetings with people, and the meetings are getting scheduled at the same time as the panels, and it's kind of a mess.
Yeah, I think last year we did a better job of being protective of the panels that we had pre-selected, and this year we were like, we'll prioritize meetings. And I do kind of regret that. I think I'd rather have more meetings during the expo hall time and attend more panels. There were definitely panels I had picked out beforehand that I ended up missing because meetings went long or got scheduled at the last minute, and I was kind of bummed out about it. There were time slots when there were 4 places I wanted to be at once, and you can't do it all.
Yeah, and I didn't really know it ahead of time, but after the meetings we did have in the exhibit hall and how well they went, because again, this is not Gen Con. People actually have time to sit down and talk to you. I agree with you. I think next time we schedule as many meetings as we can during exhibit hall hours, and then focus on the actual learning, or in the afternoon, possibly during open gaming or later in the afternoon on education days.
Well, you take the good, you take the bad.
Now, one of the most fascinating panels, no, we're not going to go through everyone we went to and list them all. There's just no time. Is a panel that was put on by Jamie Matthey of Red Raccoon Games in Bloomington, which is right along historic Route 66. And he had some fantastic things he has done to be part of that historic route that have transformed his business. Now, this was all about branding. Now, this was supposed to be for retail stores, but there was some fascinating things to learn there. Some of which we're already taking to heart. Like, we will be updating our pricing on our merch because people are advertising for free. Don't charge them to advertise for free. So that's a cool one. There's a lot to learn there. Another one, there was some great talk about target markets for stores. And I loved this line where he said, gamers are going to come to your store anyway. Whenever you go to town, you're all gamers. What's the first thing you do? You look up online to see if there's any game stores, and you make sure to stop before you leave. I'm sure all of you have already been to Sword and Board here in Kentucky and so on. You don't need to market to the gamers. The gamers are going to find you. You need to market to the moms and the twinks. And a twink is a 2-income, no-kid family or something like that. I forget the exact term.
Twin income, no family.
Yeah, dual income. Dwinks? I don't know. Doinks. Okay, dual income, no family. This was different. This was something no kids, but whatever. 2 income, no kids, whatever it was. But anyway, that's who you need to be marketing to. Did we lose D?
Yeah, you know what? You faded out in such a way that I thought the audio cut out. I'm not really here. Okay. I went to some panels that were more publisher facing on like email and marketing and on how to make a good Amazon listing from a publisher's point of view. But it was actually like fascinating, interesting stuff, right? So, that's what stands out for me. It was a mix. As I said, I didn't attend many panels this year. I missed a bunch that I had highlighted. So.
Now, another good one I went to was A Question of Trust, the role of media in the tabletop space and how we can do better. This was hosted by Matt Dunn from Gaming Trend. Check out Gaming Trend, fantastic magazine that covers tabletop as well as video games, which featured a panel that included publishers, designers, and content creators. And what was great about this panel, and yes, we were talking disclosure, and we talked review copies, and we talked previews and what's paid content versus non-paid content. But it wasn't just a bunch of media people in a room arguing about this or a bunch of publishers arguing about this. You got the perspective of everyone in the room. including insiders and people who have been doing it for years. So that was a fascinating panel. And all of our listeners know how much we care about things like disclosure and being our true selves and integrity in board game media.
So I went to a panel on embargoes, and it was directed at media. This is one of the few panels that I attended that was directed at media. And I mean, I kind of hate embargoes. If I get a game and I'm excited, I want to talk about the game. I want to be able to open it right away and look at it and do things with it. And I don't want to be like, okay, we can't actually mention anything about this for 3.5 weeks. I double extra hate when they say you have to talk about it on this particular date. Like, we not only want you to hold it off, but we definitely want you to talk about it on May 12th, exactly at 2 p.m. And I'm like, I hate this stuff, right? But it was interesting hearing it from a different point of view. And they were talking about the embargoes as are important specifically for games that have an IP tied in. That it is part of their contract with the IP. You can't have people linking stuff beforehand. You can be spoiling shows or movies or stuff by looking at components in the game and talking about it online, or even outside of that. You're just breaking their contract with the IP and getting them in hot water, and it's no fun. An interesting point of view I heard of, though, was they don't want the content creators to be the source of the hot new insider info. They want your local gaming store to have that scoop, to be able to say, I know what's coming next from this publisher and I can tell you about it. Even though the content creators do know about it, we're not allowed to talk about it yet, right? So yeah. I thought that was an interesting point of view. And then specifically, I mean, they were talking about it from the marketing angle too, that they want a big push all at once of content coming out, which is my least favorite part of it. But we're sitting there and I'm listening to this, and the one publisher is giving an example of the game Compile. And they're saying, okay, well, we're not going to talk about Compile publicly until March 12th. But I showed it to some content creators yesterday, but nobody's talking about it until March 12th. That is the embargo. And she had this same person that represented that company had previously mentioned, oh no, if you break an embargo, like we don't go slap you on the wrist. I just put you on a blacklist. We won't work with you anymore. Now, we had previewed. We had not actually previewed. We had previewed some other games with this distributor.
So
you had gone to check out Compile on the game night floor and taken pictures of it and shared it, right? Yeah.
So yeah, then the night before, here I am with this awesomely dressed gentleman, Matt, who's teaching us Compile, and on the table for everyone to see is Compile 2, which is apparently under an embargo. And here I am sharing pictures on social media saying, check out Compile, it's awesome. So there was a little miscommunication there between what they were showing on the hall, like on the floor in the gaming night, and what they were showing people in private meetings.
And yes, the embargo was specifically on Compile 2, I should say. But yes, I was so concerned that I took this PR person aside at the end of the, we kind of kidnapped her as she was walking out of the panel and went, can I talk to you for a minute? Because I was so worried that we had screwed up without, we try so hard to, every single picture that I take while I am at GAMA Expo, I ask, is this under embargo? Is this a prototype? Is it okay if I take a photo of this? Like, I'm asking all those questions every time because I do not want to screw it up. And I'm like, oh man, Mo posted pictures we're not supposed to have.
Yeah, the IP thing is a big deal. I mean, there have been all sorts of historical issues of, minis for, Star Wars coming out before the movie is out and ruining the fact that this character is in the game and things like that. IP in particular is the one time where I can, if it is related to media content sort of thing that I can understand. But, things like, oh yeah, our game about goblins, don't talk about that for another month and a half. No, just stop.
Yeah, please, content creator or publishers, let us talk about games while we're excited about them. The worst is when I am excited about the game and I'm like, oh, no, but then like 6 months later when they want us to release content, I'm like, I don't care anymore.
Also, just to clarify, compile main 1 and 2 are what we're talking about, not compile, which is a different game.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Compile main and its expansion, which I don't remember, and there's Compile 2 with its expansion. They're from Greater Than Games, being distributed by Flat River Group.
Yes, and when I took aside the rep from Flat River Group, she told us we were okay. The left hand just didn't know what the right hand was doing. But there was sort of a moment there where I was concerned.
Now, what was funny is I checked my pictures.
Compile main 1, compile aux 1, and then compile main 2 is coming out this year.
Speaking of which, anyone who likes 2-player dueling card games, just go buy Compile. It's fantastic. Compile main, either version. All right, back to panels. Final panel I want to highlight. Trust me, we went to a lot more. Was fascinating. It was called The Story of Your Game Through Video. It was a YouTuber's perspective put on by Adrian from Tabletop Titans. If you haven't seen Tabletop Titans, I've now checked them out. They have a fascinating channel where they play Warhammer 40K. They gave a lot of insight into creating content, not just video, and it's actually the main inspiration for the format of our show right now, where we are focusing on stories and moments. In the past, when people did an actual play of a Games Workshop game, you had a top-down camera showing all the units moving, which is kind of interesting if you're into battle reports and 40K. Well, what they did first is they switched to a 3D perspective. That just added immersion. So now you can see the units moving between the buildings, and they had multiple cameras so you can like see line of sight, right? It's a little better. Then they realized the key was not the game, it was the stories of the people and the fun they're having and the moments they're having. They tipped the camera up so you could see the people playing the game. Now, they went on to then include stuff like sports highlight reels type stuff. So when they showed the top-down thing, the objectives would ping and they'd have arrows on it and everything else. We are not that kind of content creator, but I've got to admit, I took the telling stories part to heart. And yes, Deanna's been telling it to me for far too long and I wasn't listening, and that's my bad. But seeing it happen and seeing the live, now this is a channel that now has trillions of views, and I am not joking. So even if you don't like Warhammer, you will probably enjoy watching this. And I'm starting to understand why my kids like watching people to play video games on YouTube instead of playing them myself after this panel.
That wasn't the only place that we got given the whole storytelling tip. It seemed like it was an ongoing thread. I'm looking up the name of the one I went to. It was Licensing and Transmedia Essentials for the Tabletop Market. Now, does that ever sound riveting? No, this was actually great because they were talking about IP and how they work with IPs. And it was just fascinating to hear it from their point of view, right? So they're talking specifically some of the timeline stuff I found very interesting. They're like, we get the rights to an IP. We can't develop the game until we have the rights. Okay? We can't do anything with it until we have the rights. Once we get the right, the clock starts because we have signed for 4 years, say. Now we have to hurry up and develop the game. And then, okay, it sounds easy. You want to use photos, stills from a TV show. Okay, they're like, great. Provide us with the list of photos that you want. We need the episode number and whatever. Go through and tell us what you need. That has to get approved. They have to come back to you. The whole thing drags out and drags out and drags out. And if you're not careful, you end up with maybe 6 to 8 months to actually sell the game before you don't have the license anymore and you have to liquidate it. Mm-hmm. And it really made sense for why we see some of these things hitting liquidation, right? And it was interesting to hear it from that side. And also, Mike Pondsmith is just a hoot, and you should go listen to him talk about The Matrix and working with the Wachowski sisters and doing cyberpunk and stuff. Like he just has great stories, and he's a great storyteller and a big amusing person to listen to. So.
Yeah, that's Mike Pondsmith of our Tell Story and Games and, well, everything cyberpunk.
So that ended up being a surprise delight that I ended up going to randomly.
See, I did not run into Mike the entire show. I would have liked to have talked to Mike. Mike is a fascinating person. Speaking of moments, I am going to call out one negative one, and to me, a very significant one from GAMA Expo 2025. One of the mornings, there was this big meeting for all GAMA members to attend. And it was on GAMA committees because GAMA has a number of various committees inside of GAMA, parts of the various heads, all trying to do good things to help the industry. Now, this includes things like the site selection committee, who has been very, very busy trying to find the next site for GAMA Expo. I will point out that it looks like Boston is in the lead right now, but that's not finalized. There's other ones. There is a marketing committee that is looking to expand the GAMA to be more of a name at local events and like sponsor libraries and schools and be more of a presence in the gaming community to help burst things. And of course, there's a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, which is pertinent because they booked this meeting at the exact same time as the Women in Gaming breakfast, which to me sure sounded like a statement.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was done with malicious intent. It's still an awkward choice. Like someone should have noticed at some point there. So I had a choice to make, and I ended up attending the Women in Gaming breakfast, where I met some fantastic ladies and had some great discussions. But like I've been thinking about volunteering my time for a committee, and I missed out on learning more in a place where it's easy to ask questions and go back and forth, right? So I don't think it's Boston. I feel like you're saying the wrong place for the selection committee, but I can't remember what the right answer is. So
That's a shame because Boston's only 11 and a bit hours. That's an easy drive.
Now, on a positive note, this meeting about committees did give me a chance to join one. I am now a member of one of the committees on GAMA that's under the media arm, and that is the Best Practices for Tabletop Media Committee. You all know how strongly we feel about things like disclosure and ethics when creating tabletop content. So I thought this would be a good way to get more involved and to honestly take a more active role, and putting our words into action. Like it's one thing for me to sit back on our show and talk about our review policy and what we believe. Well, like now let's try to help other people, like new content creators, helping to work on things like creating like a boilerplate disclosure agreement so everyone ends up on the same page. So we have taken that step. I am now on the Best Practices for Tabletop Media Committee as part of GAMA.
yeah, I need to put some time into this now that we're home and read through all the info on committees, but I want to be more actively involved in GAMA because I think it's a great organization that does a good job of trying to help and elevate everyone in the industry. I just think it'd be great to get more actively involved.
And one thing we saw over the entire week of meeting with different people and retailers and publishers, and due to recent actions by the U.S. government and the T word, you are going to see a new trend in the gaming industry to deal with the volatile market and economy that's going on right now, which is smaller box games that is done for a couple of reasons. One is that you can fit more on a pallet, so you can ship more games per pallet, more games per lift. You can fit more on a boat. Less components included on games with more standard components, so more card games, more cubes and meeples, less miniatures. And to go with that, on a positive note for consumers, lower price points. That is all being done to try to keep games affordable and try to keep them in that kind of same price point they are now. But you will be getting a little less game. Like mechanically, you're probably still getting as much. Now, a great example of this is I'm going to call out Flip 7 by the Op. They put it in an Uno box. It's now going to be able to be on a hanger shelf at all big box stores. We're right next to all the other things, less air in the box. And because of that, they also got rid of like the metallic on the front cover. There's no longer reflective surfaces on the packaging. But because of this, they were able to reduce the price point to currently $7.99 US, which is a significant drop and makes the game more affordable. Now, what they're accounting for is that because of the current market and changes, they will be able to up that. But their goal is to never go above the original price of the original game. So you're still getting the exact same game and the exact same experience and the exact same fun for hopefully at worst the same price you used to pay for the bigger box. So, and this was just one example. This was definitely a thing we saw from pretty much everyone. Where I don't know if people remember from last year, we were talking about GAMA. The trend was the $29.99 game that you could get into Target and Barnes and Noble.
Yeah.
That's kind of gone away now for this. Well, still sticking to that because now these lower price point, smaller box games can also be sold in those stores.
Like, I get why this is happening, but I have to say personally, I'm secretly pleased. I understand that when you're designing your game and picking a box, people are aiming for shelf presence. But when I open a game and it's a giant box that's half full of air, like that, it ticks me off. there's an environmental footprint there for shipping empty, wasted space around the globe, and I just feel like people don't even stop to think about that. So, well, the tariff nonsense sucks, and it is definitely going to have an impact on the gaming hobby. I'm glad to see a trend towards smaller box sizes. While we were out on the expo hall floor, I saw some heavier, longer, more complex games that were in really small boxes, and you have to. There's a trend towards, if it's a heavy game, if it has a heavy complexity, a long gameplay, it has to have a big box. It has to match the big experience. You can't have a tiny box for a big game. So I'm glad to see the move away from that. I can't remember the game that I'm visualizing right now, but there was one. It was in this narrow box, and the person that was demoing it just kept pulling out more sections of the game to show me. It was like a clown car, and I'm like, man, they really stacked it in there. I'm like, all right.
Was like a mon in his bag of games.
Yeah.
Another example of that, now I didn't see this at GAMA Expo, I just saw it at Adam, is I think White Castle is a good example of a well-packed, very dense box that is much smaller than you'd expect from a heavier game. Now, moving on to a very cool part, we get this as hosted media, is early access to the exhibit hall floor, which is always kind of cool. And we get the same thing at Origins as media. But the thing is, what they did here is awesome, because instead of just going, go run, the exhibit hall this year was open 2 days, not 3. So you had 3 days of panels and demos and night gaming and 2 days in the exhibit hall. But what they do is they don't just go run free, start sharing your media like they do at Origins. Instead, they bring you over to the Horizons Fellows. Now, we talked at length about the Horizon Fellowship program last year. And again, go back to our old episodes. We still strongly believe in this initiative. This is something where new designers and retail shop owners can get a leg up. And it's specifically, you have to have 51% minority ownership to take part in this. And the Horizon Fellows are awesome. And starting us there is just awesome, because it lets us highlight this very important program, plus gives that group of people the first airtime. You're literally putting the minorities first, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, one interesting thing, you're muted there, D. But one interesting thing is also there's a habit that happens at a lot of shows. CES, for example, when CES happens, a lot of the new media, new fancy gadgets you'll see on the news are things that are right by the entrance, because a lot of media will run in the door, get some media clips, and get out and go back and do something more enjoyable. Now, that's not necessarily as much of the case with board game media at a board game event, but the same thing still sort of happens. You're going to walk in, and that first thing you see has a habit of sticking with you a little bit more. And so it may get more focus, and having that be these up and coming underrepresented designers is an awesome thing.
Overall, the Horizons Fellowship it's a very cool program, and I love that they specifically brought the media over there and brought our attention to it. That was cool. The Horizons Fellowship mentors new game designers and retail shop owners, specifically supporting folks from groups that historically have been underrepresented in the gaming industry. So it's a cool initiative. It's like an incubator program, right? I actually tossed my card into the hat to mentor this year, because again, like I said, I'm trying to get more involved in supporting people in the industry. So we'll see where I go with that one.
Yep. But again, it's another effort to walk the talk, right? Like Deanna has volunteered to be a Horizon Fellowship mentor, so I think that's awesome. Hopefully they reach out and pair you up with someone awesome.
And I am not on the ball because I'm ill, but right now I feel bad that I didn't put the information in here to list off the people and their games.
No, in the game section. When we get to
the game section,
we will be
I feel
highlighting
better.
each of the Horizon Fellows.
Thank you.
When we're talking about the games of GAMA Expo. I didn't want to repeat it twice. That is in the second half of the show. I know we're going long, but yes, the Horizon Fellows is awesome. Like if you are a minority, they tend to take 6 designers and 6 retailers each year. Yep. There is a grant. You get mentorship. And what's new this year is not only do you get a free booth at GAMA Expo, you also get a free booth at Origins this year. So there will be a Horizons section of Origins. And it'll be interesting to know if the media first look changes to start there at Origins.
If you qualify, like if you are one of the historically underrepresented groups that qualifies for this program, go sign up. It is super cool.
Now, as for the exhibit hall, wow, big, huge. One of the awesome things to see, and I hinted at this earlier, was they made it more accessible for everyone. All of the aisles were twice as wide as previous years. There was no bumping into people, lots of room for people in wheelchairs and other mobility issues. And they added 6 large seating areas spread throughout the floor. If you listen to our content from last year, one of my biggest complaints was nowhere to sit. I am a larger gentleman who, after walking for large periods of time, or more so standing still, needs to sit my butt down and rest for a bit. Well, that there was plenty of. I never hurt for a spot to sit. Plus, those spots became great places to both network and do business. I saw a lot of the meetings with publishers. Instead of being at their booth, they would walk over to the nearest table. So thank you very much for that, GAMA. And for those of you who do have disabilities that make mobility difficult, I can now strongly encourage you to go to GAMA, even if you can only make it for the exhibit hall, which I probably wouldn't have said about last year.
Oh, the difference in how wide the aisleways were, I loved it so much. And the seating, it was so we'd meet with people, we'd look at stuff, and then I can go jump over there for a minute and sit down and take notes. That was my favorite part about it, right? But I know in the past, like when we go to Origins, you talked about how we do an entire row, and then we get to the end where the seating area is, and that's a reward for doing an entire row. We get to sit down. Last year, we get to the end of the row, and we're like, here at GAMA Expo, we get to the end of the row, and we're like, there's no chairs. That's not fair. They're not allowed to do that. So this was better.
Now, the problem with this size is it was honestly too much to see. Someone did the math and figured out if you stopped at every booth, you had 90 seconds per booth. That's over 2 days. It's a long period of time. Thankfully for us, there were lots of people we didn't need to see. No offense, but I don't need to talk to a manufacturer or someone about warehousing games. And I'm skipping the miniature painting companies because I don't paint minis anymore. But even with eliminating, I would say probably half the booths that way, we still did not see every booth at the exhibit hall. There are publishers we know and have relationships with that we just never got to.
Yeah, once we were done at the end of the last day, I was like, wait a second, we didn't find this place. We didn't end up here. How did we miss this one? Yeah, and that was with us being very mindful and trying to make sure we hit everywhere. It's a lot. It's a lot. And there were a heck of a lot of miniature painting companies there this year. It felt like more than last year.
The big thing this year in miniature painting are these pens that have brushes on the end. I don't know who failed to patent the first one, but everyone is doing them. Absolutely everyone from Vallejo. I didn't see Games Workshop doing them. Games Workshop was there. They weren't there last year. So some of the great moments on the hall floor. Artel Sorian, I don't know if people remember from last year, Jay's message to the world about Tabletop Bellhop and how awesome we are. A very flattering moment. It was kind of fun because he was handing us off to his new protege. And this year, Jay was all hands off. So that was just a fun moment. They were waiting for us. I had a very awkward interaction with Exalted Funeral. The last day, it was the last booth we hit on the last day. And like I could barely talk. I failed at making full sentences. I stumbled over everything and just embarrassed myself because first I walked up to the booth. And I'm like, oh, yeah, these are the people who do World Tour Essentials. We don't cover RPGs. That's weird. I thought they were the ones that did Monty Python. So then dude comes up. He's like, what can I show you? We're going to do that. And I'm like, nah, I don't need to see your stuff. And then I go around the corner and see all the Monty Python stuff. And I'm like, so that was a little awkward. But we had
already agreed to review Monty Python and the book is at our house.
Yes.
Yes, so and Mo's not exaggerating. He was completely incapable of making full sentences. It was so bad, I just walked away from the booth. I'm like, I'm having no part of this.
Deanna was so embarrassed, she walked away. And in the end, it worked out well, and we actually got some extra stuff to add to our review, like the very cool dice. So it worked out well. We had a really interesting conversation with Debbie from Wise Wizards. So the funny part about that is we learned that Debbie did not know we reviewed games, which I think is hilarious. We had a good reaction with her. We had a good conversation, and I'm just kind of amused. I'm like, wow, that's kind of funny.
Yeah, no, we've been working with you for several years, and you asked to have a meeting with us, and you've told us we can take home any games we want, but you're like, wait a second, do you guys actually do reviews? I'm like, yes, we do.
Like, what? It ends up Debbie really likes tabletop gaming deals and likes to see the spike in sales whenever we share her deals, and that's how she knows us. So that was kind of funny because I just always assumed it was the bellhop side of things that Debbie knew us for. Outset Media booth was funny. Deanna really felt we were celebrities in that booth. They were literally tripping over themselves. Super excited to show their new games, and they were like putting games on top of games. Oh, but wait, show them this one. Oh, wait, did you see this one? So that was kind of flattering and cute. And interestingly, side note, side story, I finally learned why Outset Media loves us so much. And I guess we are responsible for Snakes and Lattes ordering a ton of psychobabble after saying no to the game initially, and then Outset saying, check out the Tabletop Bellhop review, and then Snakes and Lattes coming back going, give me multiple cases. So that was interesting to learn.
Yeah, that was amusing that you picked up on that one.
Now, one of our goals this year, though, wasn't just meeting with publishers, but distributors. And that was a huge success. So what used to happen is we would go to any con, it didn't have to be GAMA Expo, and we'd sit down, we get a demo of a game. We're like, oh, this game is awesome. We love this game. Hey, by the way, we're media. We would love to help you promote this game. And the people go, Off Duty Ninja or Goose Games or Flat River Group. Sorry, we don't handle that. So one of our goals this year was to connect with a number of distributors. And I've got to say it was a huge success. I am not going to call out individual stories, but I will say Goose Games, thank you very much for the golden egg with the little goose in it. My youngest daughter loves it. That was also great meeting with publishers we worked with in the past, as well as meeting some new ones. We had some great breakfasts. We got to see Bezier's got some cool stuff going. They're doing a year of frights and scares. We had a really interesting conversation with Thunderworks that went a little long. The Mistborn deck builder looks hot. Brotherwise was showing that off. Man, does it look cool.
I had no clue I was interested in that game. I am interested in that game.
Yes. We now have a relationship with Capstone, who we hadn't been working with before. And we had a really fun interaction with Friendly Skeleton. It ends up they're big fans of ours due to our coverage of Fantastic Factory and Monstrosity and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was fun because we got out of the hall at the end of the last day. We were exhausted and we just went to the first possible spot to sit down. And eventually the Friendly Skeleton team ended up sitting at our table, and Mo starts chatting with them. And we're like, oh, we missed you guys on the floor somehow. I feel bad. And they're like, no, we weren't out there. And then they're like, oh, but we could show you some games right now. And we ended up having an impromptu meeting with them when I was barely capable of forming sentences at that point. So
now, one thing we did miss, and this was something that I probably, except for that little flub with the double booking, is the one thing that I actually thought was disappointing and worse than last year, was the networking lunches. So every survey they've sent out, I've called this out every time they're looking for feedback. This is the one thing I wish was back. So last year they gave us vouchers to eat in the convention center and opened up a large hallway for us to eat in. And they strongly encouraged people to sit with people they didn't know. And we met so many awesome people last year because of this. Well, this year they didn't do that. And everyone was heading out of the convention center for lunch, and people were wandering wherever and doing whatever they happened. And we just didn't have as many happenstance meetings with people we didn't know we wanted to talk to. I really hope for next year they bring back the networking lunches somehow in some form.
The forced lunchroom thing ended up being great. It made me a little anxious at first, but you end up having to go sit down with strangers and eat lunch and chat with them, and we made some great connections. I was sad to not see it there this year. It was explained to me, though, the reason, and it made sense. They're like, we opened up the one room eventually after people complained so that folks could go sit in there during the lunch hour time period. But the convention center has rules about outside food. So you can't be bringing in a bag lunch or go pick up your Qdoba from down the way and then come back and eat it there, right? So I don't know what the answer is other than them putting back in the food trucks and making us eat the food in the convention center, which had its own problems.
Yes. Again, listen to our episode from last year to hear all about that. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but at least have the room open and let people know. That would have been the advantage. Is they did open up the one room, which was the biggest gaming room that they were using at night during the day, so people could kind of sit and eat. Knowing that's there and advertising is that there, I think would be the compromise. All right. That's pretty much all I think we want to talk about. We've been going on for over an hour now, which is a little long. I just got to say, overall, GAMA Expo was an awesome experience. Like, again, we met so many great people. We interacted with people we met in the past. There were so many great moments. We have stories to tell. Not all of them that we told tonight. Some we'll only tell in person. The overall vibe I got from the industry as a whole is still very much one of a rising tide, which is awesome to see. Everyone we met was open with information and willing to help each other out, which is just great. The board gaming industry is much smaller than people imagine it. We've said this enough on the show. I'm sure most of our fans realize it, but it's not this big megalith, right? It's this tight-knit community that is all about working together. This is a place where you really get to see the good in the industry and really feel that everyone out there is out there to improve the hobby they love. And I am so honored that we were invited back as host media. But honestly, I don't know if I want John Stacy to hear this, but we would have attended either way. This is just too good a show to miss. Every year after GAMA Expo, I come home happy, energized, and excited.
All of what he said, except that last part, I come home exhausted.
That's true.
Utterly exhausted.
Sorry, I'm the social vampire. You put me in a room with a bunch of gamers and I'm good to go. So
yeah, no, I just used up 1 year's worth of peopling. I need to go retire into a nice little hobbit hole for a week or two. But other than that, no, it's amazing and I would not miss it for the world. And I highly recommend anyone in the gaming industry to go.
Well, that's all we have to say about GAMA Expo 2025 for now. Stay tuned for the next segment where we'll dive into the games of GAMA Expo.
If you have any questions or comments about this year's show, feel free to hit us up. You can leave a comment on the blog, reply to any of our social media posts, or email Mo or Deanna at tabletopbellhop.com.
Well, next up, a message from our sponsor, Grand Gamers Guild.
The new improved version of Tir na Nog is now up for pre-order on the Grand Gamers Guild website at grandgamersguild.com. Along with the new printing, which fixes all of the issues that we called out in our review, you can also get the Blessings and Burdens expansion and the new Journey to Tir na Nog, which is an 18-card escape adventure game.
Now, for those that missed us talking about it, Tir na Nog is a mathy puzzle game set in the Otherworld, the realm of the Fae from Celtic folktales. You're placing storytellers out onto a grid of cards, trying to draft sets that match your guess. It's been a big hit with our friends and family and was highlighted on our best fantasy games list, as well as our top new to us games of 2024.
Now, what we haven't gotten to check out yet is the expansion, Blessings and Burdens. It's a modular expansion that includes 5 new ways to play that can be mixed and matched. These include new Gesh cards, the Blessed Realms, where cards you discard impact your end game score, then the Lore of Places, where you earn once per round powers based on your largest colored region, Triketra, which adds in-game goals in sets of 3, and finally the Followers of the Morrigan, which provides rules for players using different Gesh cards from each other.
That sounds pretty interesting. I'm eager to check those out. There's also the Journey to Tir na Nog game, which I mentioned earlier, which is the first in a new series of 18-card escape room games called 18 Escape. The number 18 in the word escape with no space in between. It's inspired by the Holiday Hijinks series of games that you've heard us raving on about in the past.
Now, all of this is up for pre-order right now at the Grand Gamers Guild website, which is awesome because that means you all can get 10% off by using our exclusive code BELLHOP, BELLHOP.
Welcome to the second part of our GAMA Expo 2025 show, where Mo and Dee talk about all the great games they played, demoed, and checked out at this year's show, which they attended as hosted media.
So the first game that got my hype going was a game called Cardcade. Cardcade. That's CARDCADE, or arcade, kind of arcade with a C in front. Nah, it doesn't work. Anyway, this is from Manny Vega. Most people are going to know Manny from Flamecraft, and Amon Anderson, who your people mostly know from Gnome Hollow. Amon was sitting at a table showing off his new game, Cats versus Cucumbers, which looks super cute, but is super early prototyping. And Manny walks up and Amon stops him and pulls a package out of his bag. And if you were here for earlier in the show, Amon has a magic bag where he just kept pulling out games and components. He hands Manny the first initial prototype of Cardcade, which consists of wooden arcade cabinets with Amon's art that you put together with magnets. This is one of the coolest board game components I've seen. These are put at the top of a board that looks like Donkey Kong, and each cabinet holds a card in it. There's even an old school, red ball style joystick. That's the first player marker. Unfortunately, that's about all I know. We didn't get a chance to stick around to see how the game played, but that table presence was awesome. And I'm just hyped to see this game come to fruition.
Yeah, it was super neat. I saw him pull it out and start snapping the cabinets together with magnets, and I'm like, what is going on over there? I think I saw it being played at some point during the weekend, not just on that first day, and I stopped and watched for a bit. It just looked really good.
That one's interesting because that one's not even showing up anywhere on.
It doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist yet. Like I said, super early prototype.
Placeholder.
Yeah, it's still in play testing and development. Now, the first day of the con, Deanna and I spent most of our time in the prototype room. The most interesting game we played was Geozzle, Geozzle from Susan Landry. Talked about that one earlier. That was a fun experience. I think she's got a great concept with the compass-like arrows. Other prototypes that stood out to me that day was Catanate, as in cats and the word in and eight, which had a kind of interesting, the classic Ravensburger game Labyrinth, where you push on parts of the board and they slide out the other end. It had something with that going on, but it had to do with making sets of 3 and 4 with your cats. Deanna can probably talk more about that one because I know she got a full overview.
Yeah, you just basically explained it. I mean, okay. It was slick because the tiles were all plastic and they slid nicely. Like, it was just a really nicely made game. And I know that the designers explained that the name is a pun from concatenate because you're trying to make sets and rows. It looked kind of low family weight-ish, but not awful. Like, I would play this. I would try it. I haven't actually played it, so I can't speak to that, right? But it looked light.
We checked out a cool dice-driven area majority game from Dragonfire Games that, if you remember the name of, great, because I couldn't find it anywhere. That had like a 3D printed board where you're placing dice, and there was like a war game with dice. It was pretty cool.
I think that was a very early prototype, and I do not remember what the name was that they were running with.
Unfortunately, I took pictures of the game, but not the name. One that I know Deanna was also impressed by was Apostocracy and Apostocracy London in 1851 from Heather Dixon. I think you could probably say more about that one as well.
So I played a full game of this later in the game night demo hall, and I am in love with this game. It is so cool. It's just beautiful. The game designer is also a watercolor artist that does all the illustrations, and there is something magical that happens when someone that actually plays games makes the board and lays things out in a way that they make sense, and it just makes the game play better, right? The theming, trying to be the belle of the ball and capture the attention of the royalty. But there was a really neat thing here where you're working your way up through society and doing different things to do that. But you're also collecting a hand of cards to play a round of a trick-taking game. I think it's called Whist, which is a historical game for the time period. Yep. So the game ends with you all playing a round of Whist. So while you are doing these different actions, which are driven by these playing cards that have aces and queens and spades and whatever on them, but they are a little different because the king is not high. The queen is high because we have a ruling monarch that is a queen. And then we have a prince. And so, there's some things going on there where it's a little modified deck. But so you're playing to also build a good hand for that end game thing. So that was just kind of a neat twist. And if you win that end game hand, it's just more points in your point salad. But it was a neat component to the game. There was a lot of cool things going on there, and it's visually beautiful.
The main thing, we mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to reiterate here in case you only listen to this segment, is if you are a game designer, you really should join the creative arm of GAMA, the Game Manufacturers Association, and get to the GAMA Expo. Like, they had prototype rooms open 4 of the 5 days of the con, And one of the things you're going to get here that you're not going to get just from your local gaming community is you are going to get a mixed group of people, including publishers, warehousing, distributors, and retailer stores. I sat down at a prototype demo game and had a retailer say there's no way I could sell this game and explained why, and kind of broke the brain of the game designer who was sitting down at the table going, wow, I never thought of that. So it is an invaluable experience to be able to show your games to people at something like this where you have all levels of the industry present.
And it's just fun to sit down at a game and have the designer actually want to hear your input. It's neat.
Yes.
It's cool from both sides of the table.
Now, my first actual full game we played through at GAMA, excuse me. My first
I'm going to back it up, though, because you had me talk about Apistocracy. That was not a prototype game. She was actually there prototyping some other games, and she happened to have a box of Apistocracy on the table that was closed up because the rules were they weren't supposed to be showing anything that was live real games. And yeah, so we kind of got off on a segment rabbit hole there.
We're going to end up otherwise. Unfortunately, her other game is not on Board Game Geek, so I can't even tell you what it was.
Vauxhall Gardens.
Vauxhall Gardens. There you go.
Yes, and it's the same time period. She's a history nerd.
Now, my first full game at GAMA Expo 2025 was Pizza Rolls from Pet Rock Games. Quick, simple deduction game about deciding what to order on a pizza. Cute game where you got a roll, which showed what toppings you want. So there was like, the vegan who wanted all vegetables or whatever. And there was Mr. Meat or whatever. I don't remember the names. I apologize. It gave you a list of what you wanted and didn't want on your pie. There were 2 places that said on the pizza and off the pizza. And then there were a bunch of ingredients that all start off the pizza. You then played cards, which lets you slide cards between the 2 things. Interestingly, most of these cards didn't involve you moving ingredients yourself. It had you asking other players, what do you want in the pizza? And they would move something. So that was kind of neat. And there was also some cards that were like, absolutely not. It would remove a card game from play. After you play your full hand, you score. Based on the final toppings, the player with the most score wins. What's interesting is that there's a deduction element because you can kind of base it on how people are playing. You can go, oh, you're putting all the meat on. You must be the carnivore. And then you can better play against them. All right. Was neat, simple, fast, but I got to say maybe a little too simple and too fast. I found there weren't enough rounds to really get the deduction part to really play a role in the game. Like it just seemed like in most cases, you were better to just move the stuff based on your own role so that you're going to get the most points. And spending time, actions, removing stuff to try to hurt someone else just in case didn't seem worth it to me. So I don't know. That said, it's still a fun filler. A great kind of get to know you game. We've talked about those in the past. A good end of night game. And I've got to say, I would be very tempted to play this and then order the pie you end up with and force everyone to eat it. Would be kind of amusing as someone who doesn't even like most of the toppings that were in this game.
You don't actually want to do that when you end up with the pizza with mushrooms.
No, I'd take a bite. Like I would eat a slice just to do it.
The theming was amusing. The game was very quick. It's a great filler. And I feel like that deduction part would come in if you'd played it before and you knew what the roles were. Like I was very aware, since we were also playing with the designer, that they were going to know what I was doing. And I about halfway through, and again, very quick game, I realized, oh, maybe I shouldn't be so obvious with who I am, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's definitely a slight little bit more depth to it than is on your first quick play.
Yeah, I had looked forward to this one on the preview, so I'm glad you guys got to see it. I think it is hitting the spot. This is one of those games where you can get people to sit down at a table, play 4 or 5 rounds of it, and it does have a cooperative mode as well.
Now, as host of media, we were invited to a Parks breakfast put on by Keymaster Games. This was our first experience with Parks. I have heard complaints the original game was a little too simple, a little too family-oriented. Well, that's not as true on this new one. So this includes all of the expansions from the original Parks. So it's Parks with wildlife and all the other expansions. It has been streamlined and tweaked. So some of the changes that were pointed out to us is it's a longer track. The track doesn't grow every round. You're going to go down the track 3 times and every round's the same length. Campfires now only refresh at the end of a round once everyone's gone down the track with both of their hikers. And there is a new board for tracking your inventory, which everyone seemed to love, as well as your water bottle and how much water you have and what powers you have. Another significant change is something about campsites. So when you land on a spot with a campsite, you can either take the action of the spot or you can take a special campsite action. The components are awesome. The new art is very striking, a little more contrast. And they now feature all of the existing parks in the US right now as of when it was published. Another nice thing I liked is that a portion of the proceeds, I think it's $1 from every copy sold, goes to the national parks. After playing this is a must-have. I need to get this game. This will go well at our Walkerville events, but not only that, it's at that perfect, just medium, like just enough decision space with some optional rules that push it a little bit towards the heavy side. And from what I understand, there is also a family mode you can still play for people who liked the lighter version. Set collection game using a time track. Really liked it. I don't remember what they told us. It comes out later this year, but it comes out later this year. It's not out yet. I don't remember if it was a Gen Con, an Essen, or an Origins release.
Yeah, I was checking my notes trying to remember when it is it comes out, but I failed. There's a deluxe version which has like screen printed animals and such, but even the base version is super cute. I posted some pictures of little moose meeple and stuff. It's cute. But I will say I have avoided this game in the past, like intentionally dodged it because I thought it was going to be too light. And this new edition is not. It is in a sweet spot where there's enough going on that I was more than happy to be playing it. It was delightful. I can't wait to get it to the table again. I'm looking forward to it coming out.
Castle Risers is Three Little Pigs.
Razors. Castle Razors.
Sorry. Castle Razers is I don't want to say modern because it's medieval, but a updated Three Little Pigs game. Pigs are building a castle together to defend against wolf raiders. It's got a neat mechanic that when you're building a wall section, which start out straw, then wood, then stone, each piece has an action on it. And when you place a new wall, you do the brick thing where you're overlapping two of the previous place ones. Well, you then take those two actions. And what I liked about that is there's a lot of strategy because the wall you're placing is not only going to activate the two actions you're doing now, but set you up for a future action. I thought that was neat. There's also some tower defense and area majority scoring. This one looked pretty cool.
Yeah, we didn't actually play it. We just had an overview, but it also looks like it would play quickly. It looks like it comes in at a nice, low to medium family weight, and it's cute the way the tower builds up with the tiles and you get a little 3D tower. Yeah, this was my pick for checking out at the media first look, and I was not disappointed.
So it's actually showing as listed as 45 to 60 minute playtime.
Really? Because when he was talking about it, it felt zippy. I take it back.
Yeah, I don't know.
No, you end up building pretty high.
Yeah, the weight we're going to ignore because someone rated it a 3, and I don't believe that for a second.
All right, it's under an hour though, and I call under an hour.
That's for someone who likes Math the Board Game, yeah.
I do.
I don't know. That is not one we took home or anything like that. We do have their contact. It does look pretty cool. Parts and Potions. This is from Moon Saga Workshop. This was one I was hyped to check out, which looks really cool, but this one is the opposite end of the scale. This was a lot lighter than I expected. This is a fulfillment game where you're going to fulfill orders on cards using great looking potion tokens. It's one of those games where the basic tokens are the primary colors and you can take actions to make better potions by combining them. So you take the, yellow and the blue potion and combine them to make a green one. Think games like Fresco or Scoville. There's a bit of a Splendor feel here too with drafting the cards. This seems like a great gateway or next step game and looks amazing, but a little more lighter than I would have liked.
Yeah, I think you're mixing things up by comparing Fresco or Scoville because this game is not in the same weight category.
Well, it was games where you combine primary colors to get secondary colors and combine them to get tertiary colors. That's the similarity.
The art on this is very nice, very polished, very cute. The little potion pieces, they have the deluxe version with all the acrylic tokens. Very cool. I tend to look at components more than Mo does, but I had already decided this one was too light before we saw it in person, and unfortunately I was correct.
Interestingly, the people who have played this game seem to really love it. I don't, the like right now, this, I mean, without a lot of ratings, it's showing as a 9.3. The
Wow.
people who like this game really enjoy it. They all do mention that it is a casual game. So it's definitely in that. It's a 15 to 30 minute playtime. But there are a lot of folks out there who just want to sit down and play something quick and fun.
Sean likes those.
Yeah, it's true. It is Sean's type of games. Another hit for me is Lunar Skyline. This one's from Dead Alive Games. It's a trick-taking game for up to 6 players. One of the things I liked, no Trump. That is a nice thing to see. Not trying to make social commentary either. It's just interesting to see a trick taker without Trump. Also, each card has 2 suits. So when you can follow either suit. But then the next player has to follow based on the newly played card, which is just I've never seen that before. So that's also cool. Another twist is that there are in-game goals for bonus points. I'm hyped about this one. I'm hoping that Dead Alive will hook us up with a review copy soon. That's one we're hoping to get in the future, because I am obsessed with trick-taking games lately. And we have some local gamers who are equally obsessed with trick-takers. And this is one I want to sit down and play with Jeff.
It amused me because when we saw this game at the media first look, it was very prototype. And then we saw it on the expo floor and they're like, our production copy arrived.
Yes.
And it looks so much slicker.
Yes,
I'm excited
amazing
about it. Yeah.
I will point out that this is a predictive bidding game as well.
So not for Sean.
That is, I think, part of it. Again, we got to play some of these, some we didn't. This I didn't even get an overview on, but it just looked so cool. It's Vampire the Masquerade Milan Uprising, an area majority game based on the World of Darkness that looks fantastic. They weren't doing demos. They just had the game set up. But it's got the whole thing with the Camarilla and the various factions vying for control of the city with very cool looking minis. And 90s me would be drooling over this.
I didn't even look at this one. I've got nothing to add to it.
I did get a look at Luthier, the latest game from David Beck from Paverson Games and Distilled fame. Looks amazing. But man, the one thing I do have to point out, and I think Sean called this out when I was sharing social media posts, was it is a table hog. This is going to take up a lot of room. Now, I know Deanna actually got to play, so I'll let her go from here.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's a table hog. I was looking forward to playing this game. I did get to sit down and play it at the game night. There was sort of a lineup of people waiting because it is certainly hot and on many people's radars. So we did not play a full game. We played a couple rounds. And I felt like you had to act appropriately stupid to make sure that we hit all the different actions, right? So I took some silly, lesser good turns just to be able to hit all the various actions and see what things do. There are a lot of moving parts to this game. I knew I was going to like it. I sat down and went, yep, this is great. It's an action selection game where you're trying to build instruments to appease your patrons while also trying to get a seat in the orchestra. And I do a bad job of explaining games. That's why I let Mo do that part. But the thing is, I had an idea in my head of what I was expecting when I sat down, and it met it on every level, and I absolutely cannot wait to play this game.
Oh, that's the important
one thing I'm interested. This is a Vincent Dutrait game. The ever prodigious Vincent Dutrait. The images on Board Game Geek make it look very busy. How did you find it in front when you were actually sitting there? Did it work out nicely? Were things obvious?
Yeah, it felt intuitive. The iconography made sense. I didn't really have any problems with it.
Okay, because it could just be the pictures that they've chosen to put there. Then.
Hercules and the 12 Labors is the latest from Envy Board Games, which I actually saw yesterday. It was nominated for an Origins Award already. So congratulations, Envyborn. This one wasn't nominated. It was Confusing Lands from them.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know why. I'm reading my show notes. I'm like, that's wrong. Anyway, let's start over on that one. So Hercules and the 12 Labors is the latest from Envy Board Games. Beautiful game featuring tarot-sized cards that fit together interestingly to form the labors. You're playing Hercules, which starts with a small set of dice and powers that let you manipulate those dice. The neat part is every time you defeat one of the labors, you collect all the cards from it and then choose one to level up, and you're going to have that for the rest of the game. That kind of, I don't know, it had like a Slay the Spire kind of feel, or a video game deck builder feel to that, which I thought was really neat. Now, we mention all the time we're not big solo gamers, but this had me hooked after defeating a giant boar. I thought it was a very neat game, and the art looks great, and it's only going to look better because I know the prototype we played with was a little darker than it should have been.
Yeah, I'm excited about this one. I want to play it. And again, I am not big on solo games, but the theme, the art, the gameplay, it's all working for me. I'm gonna back it up and say, Luthier, I remembered it's hidden bidding action selection, and you've got some chips and different numbers. You're sending out family members to go. Yeah, see, I'm not allowed to explain games. You have to do that part.
I didn't play that one, so I can't. You just scared Sean away, though.
It's good. You have to try it.
Hidden bidding
I will
isn't
tie you
as
to
bad.
a chair.
All right, next is Evian. This was on our hype list due to the fact it's called a deck builder. Well, I'm sad to say this is not in any way a deck builder. This is a dueling card game where you build your hero out of all the cards you own. It features a board with awesome artwork, but none of that matters. It's just a grid to put cards on. And the pitch for this game, as the publisher pitched it to me, is it's Magic the Gathering with a board. Now, I don't want to shoot the game down. It could be a fantastic deck dueling deck construction game, but it's not what I want it to be. I love deck building games. I thought building your character through deck building sounded fantastic, but that's not what this game is.
Yeah, I was so disappointed in his pitch for this game. And I'm not saying it's a bad game. It's just not for me. Yep. That I was like, oh, good, he's talking to Mo. I can wander off halfway through and I don't have to get through. So it's like, oh, this is definitely not for me.
Sorry, Evian. There are players out there that will love your game.
I mean, they've been going for a long time. They've got a lot of pieces. There is clearly
it seems to be doing well.
Market for Evian. We just aren't it.
Yep. Smirk and Dagger, our friends, showed off some very cool stuff. Enthroned, 2-player only chess-like game that's like chess with deduction. You're assigned a hidden role. You're one of the pieces on the board, and you need to get your piece to the center or eliminate your 3 targets listed on the bottom of your card. And interestingly, this one's similar to Pizza Roll in the way that because of the things players are doing, your opponent's doing, you may be able to figure out who they are. And then once you can do that, you can take actions to thwart them. A big part of the game, of course, is having the card that lists all the different targets for each different character. So you're going to need to be subtle and use bluffing and deduction to win. One aspect of this game that was to them was a selling point is its table presence. It's got a large stained glass window looking board and busts that are like 3 inches tall. While they were really proud of this and it did look good, I was a little disappointed because you know us with 2-player games. I want a smaller game that would fit on a coffee top table, where this was a little bigger than I would have liked to have been. But I got to say, this was a game I knew nothing about until we saw it at the media preview event, and now I'm pretty interested.
Yeah, that was my first question when they showed it to us. I was like, is this mocked up to be a demo version? Like, did you supersize it? And they're like, no, it really is this big. And I'm like, oh, that's not the plus you think it is, guys.
Yes.
I just felt like it could have been smaller and still cool. But the game looks so good, and I love that it was designed specifically at 2 players. I'm actually super excited to try it. Hidden role deduction, usually it's larger play groups, right? So doing it at 2 sounds cool.
You're going to combine that game with Pizza Rolls, so you're building a pizza while you're battling each other? No, I said it was surprising to see those 2 games be so similar, and they're kind of different ends of the scale. All right, also from Smirk and Dagger, I was super shocked to see an expansion for This Game is Killer, the alien-based horror party game. We just reviewed that recently. This new game is called This Game is Killer Frozen Horror, which is not an expansion. Actually, it's a totally standalone horror party game. People may be able to guess this already by the name Frozen Horror. It is based on John Carpenter's The Thing. This has hidden traitor elements, which were not in the Alien game, but the player who is the Thing actually changes every round based on the cards you get. It also includes counters to show where everyone is on the compound, and a big part of the gameplay is making sure you're not left alone with the Thing. There's locking doors and pushing people through airlocks and all kinds of things. Now, the basic gameplay is still the same. You're going to get 2 cards. One's going to be your movement action, and one's going to be the action you take once you get into the room you move to. I think this is going to be a big hit. I think it's going to be as popular as this game is killer. I think our public play events are going to like this one, but this one isn't due out till Gen Con.
I suspect I would rather be playing this game as killer. I just like the theming a little bit more because I like the movie it's basing itself on a bit more. And I'm not big on Hidden Trader, but I would willingly sit down and try this.
Well, chatting with Smirk and Dagger, we also got the lowdown on Outfox the Fox, a new party game that I think is going to be great for our Walkerville game nights. It's a game about ranking things. But unlike most of the ranking games that are all just personal preference, this is based on actual scientific research. For example, in our demo game, we got to rank the most annoying sounds in the world, which included things like nails on a chalkboard and vomiting. The trick is the person giving out the clues is going to make up one answer. So you're going to have 5 facts and 1 fake fact and trying to deduce which one's the fake fact part of the game. What was fun from this one was the fact that it was based on actual research and it quoted the research group that did it. So there was a bit of feel of not The Price is Right. What is it called?
Family Feud.
Family Feud.
Yeah, there was a bit of a feel of Family Feud here. It was kind of neat, and I got to say the categories were more interesting than you usually see. It wasn't, your favorite model of car.
I need to actually play this one to see how clunky it is. It felt a little bit clunky because you're going to get a card. It's got 4 things on it, and then you have a 5th. You have to write out all of those before you can start the round, right? So I'm like, I feel like there's going to be a fair amount of downtime, which perhaps isn't bad because it's a party game. Everyone's going to be sitting around chit-chatting and having a drink. I need to actually have that experience before I can decide how I feel about it.
Yeah, the big problem here is it has the balderdash problem of you don't want to be able to tell someone's writing to know which is the wrong answer. So one person has to do all the writing. So
well, no, according to the actual listing, the person reading it reads it out, and then somebody else at the table writes down all 6 things that are being said.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, same difference.
It's just the time that
someone
that
has to write out all 6
No, I know, but
answers,
that doesn't give it away because the person who's making it.
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what they fixed. That's why they do it this way. Is if everyone wrote down their own thing, you'd be able to tell.
Sorry.
Well, I'm capable of pretending I'm copying off a card. Come on.
Then we're gonna get to a game that I think all 3 of us are hyped about. This is why we went to the Smirk and Dagger booth. Not that we don't love all your games, Kurt, but A Place for All My Books did extremely well on Kickstarter for good reason. This looks amazing in all ways, theme, art, and gameplay. I was originally going to let Deanna talk to you about this one, but I know she's feeling rough.
Oh, all right. I'll try, and then you can correct me.
Okay.
Cozy games are like a trend right now, which is kind of cool, right? Instead of, all being war themes, even though I like war themes, we get cozy games. And this game is about books and stacking them up in your apartment and finding ways to stack books to meet requirements for points, but also building up we're all introverted. We don't want to leave our apartment to go out, but we need to go out and get more books. So you build up your social battery to go out into town to buy more books, which depletes your social battery and then sends you home with more books, rinse and repeat. And I mean, that's really cute. How can you not like that theme? And I will let Mo fix everything I've said from there.
No, that was pretty much it. So you've got a bunch of goals and you're going to spend most of the time rearranging your collection to fit various goals. Like I'm going to put all my green books in this corner of my room, and there's your room in your house and where you've stacked things, or you might want to stack them in certain orders. And you're going to do that to build your social battery to go out and buy more books. That pretty much covers it. There was some other interesting things going on in town, and there was like people that a third party could get involved. But yeah, you got the gist of it. And it just like talk about a cozy game. My only concern, which we didn't get from a demo, is I'm not sure how much interaction there is. This may be very strongly multiplayer solitaire, but I can't say. We got a brief overview from Kurt. He told us, and I'm like, I'm sold. Like, this just sounds amazing. Again, not due out till Gen Con, so we may not be able to actually tell you about this one till next year, but we are very much looking forward to A Place for All My Books.
It's interesting. There's only a couple of ratings on it, but they have already very much split on it. So there are people who don't like this for some reason. So who knows? Be interesting to see. Be interesting to see once it's released and the numbers get out there how well it does.
I always worry about ratings on an unreleased Kickstarter.
Well, they're all from February, so they were probably all the people who played it at GAMA.
Oh, that's possible. I did not. There was no chance to actually play it though. Like it was not out at the game
not that
nights.
I'm aware of.
All right, next, Diatoms. This is from Ludoliminal. It's an abstract strategy game based on the lost Victorian art of making intricate patterns out of diatoms, which are microscopic algae. I encourage everyone listening to look this up because it's fascinating. It's a lost art form that is very neat. This is a cool theme that was actually highlighted in the mechanics, which involved the start of your turn adding a diatom to a growing algae culture in a petri dish, then placing your microscope to highlight 3 of the tiles, which you would then collect and place onto your player board, kind of Azul style. This already won a Cardboard Edison Award and was very popular. We keep hearing about it throughout the show, and this was one of the Horizon Fellowship members. So that was pretty awesome to see.
I think this game already got picked up by a publisher.
Yes,
I'm thinking 25th Century Games. Yeah. I played, unfortunately, not a full game of this at the open game night. It was fascinating, and I mean, it's visually very nice to look at. But that round magnifying piece that you put down is very functional because I can look at that and I can say, all right, what happens is you place a tile, and when you place a tile, you're completing a pattern, making sets with the tile that you just placed. And I can look at that and go, that's the tiles that I just connected, blah, blah, blah. But it really is easier and easier to see from across the table once you put that magnifying glass down around it. It's both thematic and kind of cute, but also helps the gameplay and speeds things up. And you're not physically taking the tiles off the board, which you are building together, but you're then getting them from over here, matching tiles from over here to put on your personal diatom, whatever, your personal player board, where you're making patterns on there, and the patterns that you make on there are also various scoring opportunities. There's even things where you have to mirror from one side to the other. It looked really neat. It just looked like super fun. Something that I found that happened at Open Game Night this year that didn't happen to me last year was the people showing the games were willing to have you play a full game for most of them. Like, not everything. Some stuff was just too popular. But the retailers were like, okay, I get it. I'm sold. I'm on to the next one. They didn't want to stay for a full game, right? So when I sit down with a bunch of retailers and they're like, yep, we're good. Okay, we're gonna tell you right now, I want this game. I didn't get to play it. God darn it.
Yes. Next up, I shouldn't always say next because we're not quite going chronological order here, but next one I want to highlight is a new expansion for Land vs. Sea. Check out our Land vs. Sea review to find out we're excited about this. This is from Good Games Publishing, an Australian publisher, which included new larger tiles and 3 new ways to score and play. I would love to tell you more, but we're not allowed to talk about that one anymore yet. But we did bring a review copy home, so expect to hear more. Also from 12 Good Games Publishing, the hotness of the show from them was 12 Rivers. Talk about table presence. The game board, I don't know how to describe this, is basically a funnel style marble run. So a marble run where the marbles are all starting at different places and ending up the same at the bottom. With 14 it's 14 rivers, isn't it? Not 12. I think I messed that up in the first one. Pretty sure it's 14 rivers, 14 different tracks. But your actions on your turn are to put a blocking piece down one of the rivers. And then when the marbles roll, marbles will build up behind your blocker. And then you get to take one of those marbles. And you're drafting the marbles, which are worth different victory points. And you're going to put them on your alpacas. And you're going to do all things. But then you remove your little blocking piece and the marbles continue to flow. And whoever's got the next one blocks selects a marble. And what blew me away about this is I have never seen this mechanic, right? Like we always talk about how every new board game is just reiterating old games. I've never seen this. So that's awesome. Like just even doing something new. Once you got your marbles, you're loading your alpacas, you're making friends with villagers in the cities, Again, cozy games are hot. It does have a cozy theme. But I got to say, competition for those marbles is fierce, and you can see everything's public information. So you can look over and go, well, to make that villager happy, you need 2 blue. So I'm going to make sure not to let you get 2 blue. Very neat game. I played 2 rounds of this and was surprised by how much depth it has. It's not just a gimmick of marbles running down a hill. I'm really hoping we can get a copy of this when it's getting closer to release time.
This one's weird because it was on sale at Essen in 2022. The publisher is listed as BG Nations, and it's
So
alpacas.
they must be
and
localizing
everything you're
it?
describing is definitely here, but it's 2022, and it was on sale at Essen.
So Essen's in Germany. I'm guessing it's probably that Good Games Publishing is localizing this to North America.
It's because it's not listed in any of the versions, so it's weird.
And I think it's 12 Rivers. But
it's 12 Rivers. I mean, everything you described is there in this game, but
12, not 14. I only went over there to the Good Games Publishing table to look at and talk about the Land vs. Sea expansion, which you had me at Land vs. Sea and expansion because I really dig that game. But this, you couldn't help but look at it because it was very eye-catching. I didn't play it like Mo did, so I don't have as much to say about it. Sorry.
And while they can't talk about Land vs. Sea expansion, the Board Game Geek page does say that there are 22 new tiles and 3 new scoring mechanisms.
Embargoes are silly. That's all I have to say. This is one from our list from last week. I don't know if Sean's managed to do it, but if you have time, figure out the stuff that we said we were hyped about and see if we talk about all of them. That may be more work than we can squeeze in tonight. But one of the ones on our list was Pergola. Unfortunately, we never got to try it. It proved very popular. Anytime we passed it by, there were lineups to play it. And honestly, with the amount of stuff in the room, getting in line seems silly. The component quality, though, holy cow, including like these very 3-dimensional holders with spades and shovels pushed into them. It looked super inviting. It's one of those games that if we had this set up at a public play event, people are going to wander over and go, what is this? Look cool, but sadly did not get to try it.
I honestly don't know if this is a plus or a minus, but it was the most toyerific looking game out on the floor. There was a lot of games that were on my I want to see list that I did not see. I am painfully aware of. One of the ones I did check out was Fountains from the Op. It's just, this was a prototype. I'll toss pictures up somewhere. You're going to see it on social media at some point, and it was a prototype. But you're building 3D fountains that are like thick foam card that build both up and out, and you have to keep the water flowing while you're also trying to get matching things with certain types of fish and water lilies. That's the basics of it. And it's got a lovely Art Nouveau look to it. Like It's visually, you cannot help but be drawn over and go check out this game. I will say I played it and I don't know, it was just okay. I felt like I wanted there to be more there than there was. It was forgettable. Nothing about it made me want to go back and play it again.
Unfortunately, it's by Kedrick Winks, friend of the show.
I know. I feel so bad. I'm like, it looks pretty, and it's got things going on. I would probably try it again, but I played nearly a full game of it, and I was just like, yeah, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not doing anything that excited me.
Since you're mentioning the op, I'm going to quickly call out Hutan. No offense to the op, it was the very end of the night, on the very last day, but we got the worst demo ever of Hutan, and we're not speaking about it more than that tonight. Other than say it looks cool. It is a follow-up to Aqua, so it has like that layering boards thing to do neat things. But the demo we got did not give it justice. I'm sure we'll have future chances to check the game out. So if anyone wants to hear about Hutan, maybe when we get to our Origins recap episode.
I mean, we were talking about how tiring this is. Now people get so burnt out. The person that was demoing it, I think, was falling asleep while giving us her rehearsed pitch. It was like, I
don't want to get anyone in trouble. So.
No, but I'm just like, I felt it. I'm like, at that point, I was ready to sleep while walking. So I'm like, I feel you.
Next up for me was a couple rounds of Emerald Skull from Thunderworks Games. This is a game set in the role-player universe where you're playing goblins gathered together to play their favorite dice game. It's a push your luck dice game. It's also a betting game for everyone else. So on your turn, you're pushing your luck, trying to get the most points by placing these dice onto a skulls, while the other players are placing bets on how well you're going to do. What was fascinating about this in a very Euro game feel is what you bet on changes every game. So it's not like, you sit down to play craps and it's always the same. It changed what you were allowed to bet on, which I thought was neat. And there were different difficulty levels. So there's harder bets and easier bets, which I think is really great because, as you know, we love games with dials where we can turn it up for the heavier gamers and turn it down for public play nights. The dice placement system was pretty simple. There were some thematic tie-ins, like you're placing things in the skull, and at the end of the round, if you want to reroll, you can pick your nose by picking up the die out of the nose, right? Your gross goblins. I thought that was neat. When I first heard about this one, though, I was like, this looks super light, like a Yahtzee with skulls and goblins and probably some take that. The problem was it was a little heavier than I think I would have liked. Like the dice placement rules were simple enough, but the betting rules. And I'm a little worried that this seems like a great dice-based push your luck betting game for gamers. I'm not sure it's going to have the universal appeal that I was hoping it would, because honestly, I was interested in this one more for our Walkerville game nights than I was for our family and friends. So I'm not sure. Now, again, I got a short demo. I do have a review copy. We did take it home. I'm looking forward to finding out if there's like a simpler version we can throw out with basic bets, but it just seemed a little more complicated than I was initially hoping.
My turn. I'm going to talk about Goats and Goblins, which is from BA Games. It's going to be coming out on Kickstarter soon. I'm not sure exactly. I did a bad job of referencing my notes, but it is coming up on Kickstarter. I gotta tell you guys, this is not the kind of game I would normally play. I was walking around the game hall, and the fellow from BA Games kind of motioned me over, and I just didn't want to shoot him down, and he's showing me this game, and I'm just like, this is not my kind of game. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I don't have time. I'm trying to get to something else. And he's like, it's quick. And I'm like, 5-10 minutes, because I don't want to be the jerk that walks out in the middle of the game. He's like, yeah, no, sit down. So I sit down, and the designer team from Moon Bunnies comes and sits down.
Oh, cool.
And a retailer and a guy that was involved in production for BA Games, I think. Someone that worked with BA Games, but like was not there working for BA Games. And we're all sitting down to play this game together. And it is a push your luck card game where you are goblins that are going into a cave to try and get treasure. You're pushing your luck because there are going to be cave-ins. So someone each turn is the expedition leader, and it goes around the table. So guy across the table starts off as the expedition leader. And now we all have cards in front of us that we just have 3 cards. One is a coin that's double-sided that says you're either in or you're out. And you can choose if you're going to take part in the expedition or not. We all blind bid at the beginning to say if we're in or out on that particular expedition. And there was another one that said something intriguing, like force you to go further and pull 2. And I can't remember what the third one was, unfortunately. I have pictures. I should figure this out. But anyways, we all bid, and I bid I'm out. Everyone else bids are in. And this was after hearing the guy say he's going to go 10 cards in. I thought 10 cards is a stretch. You're not making it 10 cards into this deck that looks like it's maybe 50, 60 cards, right? So they're pulling cards, and they make it to 10 cards. But then I say, hey, what's this card here do that makes you pull more cards? Oh, it makes you pull 2 more cards. When they pull 2 more cards, the expedition fails. Now, what I hadn't explained yet is everyone that went on the expedition is going to get to share the money. But the person that sits out gets the money if they fail. So I was the only one that sat out, and I got to collect 12 cards in loot, which was just a fun way to start the game, right? But then the cards are also, some of them are just straight up treasure, but some of them have powers on them that you can play. If you play them, you're losing out on the endgame scoring of the treasure, but you get to do fun things. And I just had fun messing around with people in that game, because you got to do things like change the side of your coin from one to the other. So, I'm like, I'm in on this one, guys. I'm totally in. We're all in. Cool. We're gonna do this. You failed. I'm out. And now I get all the loot again. So it was swapping it from one side to the other, causing people to draw more. And for a fun, simple for a quick, simple push your luck game. And I don't like push your luck games. It was a hoot. I think mainly because of that. My favorite part was that mechanic where you could force it to flip from one side to the other. There was also a thing where you're a set collection, you're collecting sets of goats, goblins. The retailer who was sitting to my left, who was playing quietly, of course, won the game, because if you just sit back and go, shh, you'll usually win. But I messed around with people and it was fun. And the art is by Amon Anderson, who is got his fingers in all the pies, it seems like. So, yeah,
And
that's it. It was a surprise game for me.
Shame on BA Games for not putting the game onto Board Game Geek because it hasn't launched on Kickstarter yet or something, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they were burned by a game that didn't fund, but it should be on Board Game Geek, and it's not. There is a placeholder on Kickstarter launching soon, but not on Board Game Geek.
All right, sidetrack. Story time. Game nights at GAMA Expo this year went from 8 to 11 p.m. every night except Thursday. This year, they were at the KICC, not at the Galt House, and they were in the largest hall there. So you had something like 70 tables with at least 2 games on each table. So like 140 games going on, right? So here I am, first night, wandering around, just checking things out, looking at this, looking at that, wishing I could sit down to play certain games that were very popular, and I couldn't. And then I had noticed they put out snacks in the middle of the room, and I'm like, oh, snacks. I could use a snack. That's awesome. So I wander over, and I go to the snack thing. It's in a big wooden crate near the center of the room, and there were 3 items in this crate. And I took a picture of this and shared it online, so you might have laughed about this already. The 3 options at a public play game night at GAMA Expo were Cheetos, Doritos, and Smart Food. Seriously, WTF, who the heck planned this? It's like someone intentionally decided to pick the worst possible snacks for game night and put them off while publishers are showing off prototypes of games or first ever production copies. Like some of the games in those rooms were the only copy in existence in the world right now, and you are encouraging people to eat Cheetos, Doritos, and Smart Food. I don't know if this is on GAMA or the KICC or what, but what the heck?
That was a choice.
No, there were no chopsticks. I'm sure some publishers would have liked that if they had something. I was blown away. I'm like, come on. If you're gonna put out snacks, great. But those 3, it's like the only thing they could have done worse is then suddenly started sharing wings with everyone. Like that's now that those snacks are done. Let's bring out the wings.
All right.
Blown away by that.
I got one more game to talk about, and that's Tea Witches from the Op. It's by Manny Vega from Flamecraft. The art is by Sandara Tang, who is the artist from Flamecraft. It's following him with that whole cozy cute vibe that's been popular. And I was kind of hyped about this game going in, but I was worried because there's a push your luck aspect, and I was worried it might be lighter than I liked. And then I sat down and played it. The push your luck aspect is mitigated in lots of interesting ways. It is not too light, and the game is just bloody delightful. And I was so sad that we didn't. Again, it was one of those. It was very popular. There was a lineup of people wanting to try it, so we only did like so many rounds of it, and then you're out. I want to play a full game of that game so bad. There's this neat fountain in the center that has the tea in it, and you manipulate the fountain, and you're also at these various spots that you go to. You don't go yourself. You send these adorable teapot creatures out, magical teapot creatures out. There's got a name for them, something like tea pups or something like that you send out to collect tea for you. And then you turn the fountain to make sure that the colors of the tea that you want to make these sets are in the right spot. And I don't know, there's just a lot of really neat things going on, and I am super, super excited to. It is sort of Lazy Susan, but not all at once. Like, the only thing that changes is the fountain in the center. And again, I was playing a prototype copy, though it was very polished. And I would say 100% the gameplay is locked in at this point, and the art is locked in. I have photos. It is super cute. Like, just utterly adorable. I heard that they're also making little pins and plushies of the characters because it's cute. But yeah, I'm excited about that game. I want to play it.
It is.
Yeah, I wanted to try that one and did not get a chance.
It is puntastic.
Oh yes,
because it is tea witches, where you are sending out magical teapups to entice celebrities.
Yes.
and brewing special teas.
Yes.
So yeah,
it is teapups, and yeah,
and there's the Tequinox Fair, the greatest tea witch of the Tequinox Fair. So be prepared for the puns if you're going to get into this one, folks.
All right. One thing everyone asks every time is, what's the biggest shock of the show, right? What's the biggest hidden gem? What was the game that blew you away? And my answer every time is Barum. That's B-U-R-U-M, pronounced broom, like broom sweeping something away. You're not going to find this at any major publisher because this was an independently designed game from a couple of older moms who created this game to play with their friends. The couple of them looked very overwhelmed, and seemed like they would have been more in their element, say, at a Legion Euchre night. I happened to walk by and they gave me a very earnest, please try our game. And I figured, why not give it a shot? Besides the game basically looking like Uno, like it was a card game with big colorful numbers on them in 4 different colors. I'm going
to pause you right here to say I was walking by, Mo had gotten the pitch, and he said, oh, Deanna, come sit down and play this with us. We're just starting this game. And I was like, yeah, okay. That doesn't look like much.
No, at that point I had played 1 round, so I knew it was good. So I had played 1 full round, and I was like, here, play again, because, man, it's good. So like Uno, it's a game where you're trying to void your hand. But in addition to your hand of cards in your hand, you have 4 2-card piles in front of you. 4 face-up cards on top of 4 face-down cards. You get a hand of cards. I couldn't tell you how big. I don't remember. I think you deal them all out. And the cards are numbered 1 through 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then there's a 20, a 30, and a 40. And you have 4 of each of those in each color. Now, the number of colors you have is based on the player count. You just add more decks to play with more players or take decks out. You also have a 50, which I'm not sure why it's numbered 50. That was the one weird thing in the game, but that has a broom on it. On your turn, you play any number of cards with the same number. Now, if there's cards already in the center, that has to be a lower number than the top card in the center, the top card in the discard pile. So anything can be played on a 40. You can play a 4 on a 9, for example. Now, if you are forced to play a higher card because you don't have anything lower, you got to pick up that whole stack, everyone that's played on it, and you end up with this massive hand of cards, right? It's terrible. That's all dead simple. The neat rule is that if at any point 4 cards of the same number, not color, number, are played into the pile, the player playing the 4th card sweeps the pile. That's the theme of brooms. You sweep the pile aside, removing those cards from the discard pile or from the play area. You then get to play anything you want. So you get to restart the deck, right? Here's your chance to get rid of those 40s and 30s. This could be one person playing 40 cards. So you're just like, I play 4 4s and I sweep. Or it could be like D plays 2 5s, then I play a 3rd 5, and then Sean happens to have the 5th and is able to sweep. This was actually really fascinating and led to some great moments. Now we get back to those stacks in front of you. Well, you have to play all those cards too. They're considered part of your hand. Well, the face-up cards are pretty simple, right? They're face-up cards. You play them just like anything else. You could play, I got a 4 in a hand and a 4 face-up. I play 2 4s. But the face-down cards, you got to play blind. So there's this fun push your luck, figure out the odds element here. And some of the most fun moments in the game were people flipping up a card, either just missing the target and having to pick everything up, or flipping a card only to be able to play it and then 2 other cards from their hand and sweeping. Finally, there's a 50 card, the Baroom card. You can play that anytime to swip the discards and play again. The entire thing was simple and engaging. It had that allure of Flip 7. For anyone who knows Flip 7, that's super simple to teach and lots of fun based on how easy it was to play. And you had those great card flipping moments. That's like, all right, what's my blank card? Yes, I did it. I'm good, right? Like those were some of the moments of the game. Now, this is being self-published, but I strongly pushed them and recommended they meet up with a couple of companies. Like this, to me, felt like a Smirk and Dagger game or a game from the op. Now, I don't know if the 2 women who were publishing the game ever did get to meet with some publishers, but I pointed out, you're at GAMA Expo. These people are here. Try to book a meeting.
This very much felt like a game that somebody should pick up and put some decent art on. I really love the way it scaled. Like, it was massive. It came with 4 decks, and you could play it with up to, I
12.
don't
I think it was more
remember
than
how
4
many.
decks.
12 people.
12. Yeah.
Two boxes.
And it,
2 boxes, 12 people.
it felt like it scaled well, and it was engaging because you are having those moments where people are sweeping it, where people are flipping a card that is going to be blind, and everyone at the table is like, "Ooh, what's going to happen here?" So it's good to games that keep everyone invested in what's going on at the table.
Yeah, and like Roger in the chat's calling it Grain Captor, they're done. The game's out. It's published. You can go buy it off their website. I just think the publisher should pick this up so it can explode, right? End up everywhere.
Yeah, you can go to baroomcardgame.com, see all about the team at Tiley Tisdale, which looks like it's a family, basically.
Yes,
nice big family. Learn how to play the game, buy the game. It's what is it? It's free shipping in the States, $24.99 US for each, with a discount if you buy more than one. Because again, I think you need 2 boxes, I believe, to play the full 12 count.
Well, it's 6 players per box.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and you could technically just keep adding to play even more players, though I don't know.
Yeah.
They've only play tested it up to 12 is what we were told. They figure you can play 99 people, but they haven't tried it.
I think no. That sounds awful.
Well, and now what makes this they say games take either 15 minutes or 2 hours.
I didn't get that vibe. So
maybe that's with 99.
To be fair, I don't know. Like it was quick. I would even say under 50 minutes. Like, it was a pretty quick game when we played it. That part confuses me from what I saw of the game.
Fair enough.
So far, all we've talked about are board games. I will admit board games are the big focus at GAMA Expo. RPGs, though, are also a part, but a much smaller part. There are going to be RPG publishers are definitely out there, and they have booths, but it is the minority. I didn't realize quite how small, especially for the open game nights, until accidentally taking a wrong turn and finding the RPG room instead of the board game room on the way back from the washroom. Compared to the board game room and even the prototype room, it was kind of sad. A little disappointed, actually. There were maybe 6 games going on in the room. There was a Pathfinder game. Urban Shadows was being played by Magpie Games. Jade Dragon was running Wander Home. And then there was another very gay game, in a good way, being played. I didn't catch the name of it. In the center of the room, though, was Matt Forbeck running his latest game, the Marvel Multiverse RPG. Additionally, I left the room because Deanna doesn't like me talking RPGs, and here I am doing it. But Sean loves Super's RPGs and actually reviewed the playtesting version of Marvel Multiverse role-playing game. So I decided to go back and sit down and play the game with the designer, especially being a game we had mixed feelings on.
Yeah, I'll give you a pass on this one.
Yeah, I probably would have.
So I sat down to a demo. I had a great time. Interestingly, I learned that the design goal, the goal of the game, was to be supers for D&D players. That is what they were trying to make. And they also called it D&D without the D20 because they wanted to set themselves apart so that it wasn't just a 5e compatible supers game, which is something I got to say they nailed. They did it right. And I think Sean basically called it out during his review that this was more of a D&D game than a supers game.
Yeah, I did not review this fondly for my interest, but it sounds like they've done it well. And I probably would have sat down just to see how Matt played it as well. Even though I knew I would probably never play it again, getting that experience with Matt is definitely worthwhile.
Yeah. And now, knowing that design goal, once he put that forward and put it on the table, I went on and asked lots of questions and tried to break the game and do out-of-the-box things. Being the person I am, I did get permission of the other players at the table. Role players, please do that. If you're gonna be a jerk and try to break things, get permission before you do so. And I gotta say, Matt and his game and his system were up to the challenge. Matt in the Marvel Multiverse game even managed to pass the Crying Hulk challenge. That's the challenge I put forth to every Marvel RPG, my Thor's Hammer, to make sure the game is worthy of the Marvel name. No, I'm not the one to gatekeep, but it's at least my little litmus test. I'm not going to go into that now. If you want to hear more about how this demo went and the Crying Hulk challenge, I did post a First Thoughts review game on our Patreon, which we don't plug all that often. You can get access to that by supporting us at any paid tier, even $1. All right, Dee and I actually sat down and played a game together, Yokohama Duel, that has been out overseas for a long time, but is finally coming to North America by Synapse Games. It was a good, we like good, heavier 2-player games. This fit the bill well. It's a little bigger than I would have liked. It does remove the Mancala-like mechanic of placing your workers from Yokohama, but did have the whole progression, the feel of collect this to trade for that, which I then use to do the thing that gets me points. So that was a very solid experience.
Yeah, this was fun. I would play it again, but it was a bit of a table hog, like shockingly big space for a 2-player game.
One of the ones that was on our list to check out was Coral. We never got to play, but we did get an overview, and I got to touch the components. Looks really solid. This is one I'll be looking for at Origins to see if we can actually get a demo in.
Yeah, I spotted Smug Owls on the game night floor, and I noticed that they now have expansions. I guess they had just arrived that day off the boat, so I got to see that there was 3 expansions. One was an After Dark one. One was, oh shoot, I shouldn't have done this if I wasn't going to write down the actual names.
I think I have them later in the notes.
All right.
But I don't know where.
Skip it. Let's talk about it later. Continue.
I think I have them. I think I called them out. Quick non-game interlude. To be fair, there was not a lot of non-game stuff at the GAMA Expo for the Game Manufacturers Association. But there was a company there called Joy Toy that had Warhammer 40K action figures. They had a bunch of Chaos Space Marines, some Ultramarines, and Space Wolves. When looking at their stuff, they're like, pick them up. And we're like, no, we're good. We're just taking pictures. Pick them up. We're like, we're not retailers. We're not going to buy it. Pick them up. And I picked them up and I'm like, oh, they were so nice and super posable. Like they remind me of the Marvel Legends figures and about that size. Lots of accessories. I sent these to our Warhammer fanatic friend, Eugene, who is now trying to find these in retail stores in Detroit. They were just pretty awesome. So Joy Toy is making 40K action figures that, man, I would have loved those as a teen.
Yeah, no, the joy was accurate. It was the end of the night and they were scooping everything to clean it up. And I'm like, oh, it's okay. No worries. And they're like, touch them. Yes. We insist, touch them. And I picked one up and I'm like, oh, this is fun. I would like to take this home with me now.
Now, if they do reviews, you might see them start showing up in our backdrop.
Unlikely.
I didn't even get a contact, to be fair.
No, but they were delightful.
You can check them out at joytoyfigures.com.
We got to see early look at Xylatar has an expansion. I would have never guessed that was coming ever. Like, not a game I expected an expansion from. It has 2 modules, or possibly 3 if you count a score sheet as a module, but they finally put in a score pad. The first are half note cards, which have to do with you pull some cards out and put in half notes, which are good for a sneaky win because they're a little bit above the 1 number. Also, something I really didn't think you'd throw into a trick-taking game, which is asymmetric player powers, because that's what every trick-taker needs. You know what? I love asymmetric powers. So asymmetric powers in Xylatar. What we haven't figured out is this game is coming out at Origins, and one of their promo cards was a ticket to go see Bobby Coldsnap. I think it's Bobby Coldsnap. So yeah, I'm not sure what happened with Bobby and the RCMP, but I'm interested to learn. We also got to hear that Bezier's theme this year is the Year of Fear. Scream is a new horror-themed version of Scram. And the latest expansion for Rebel Princesses is Happily Never After. Also 2 new versions of Silver. We also got to see something inspired by Zolkin, but that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, have I mentioned I hate embargoes? I'm excited about the Xylatar expansion. Yay for asymmetry, and Xylatar's fun. I want excuses to play it more.
Now, I mentioned earlier, one of the things we were trying to do is connect with distributors. We had a great meeting with different distributors, and it was interesting to see a distributor pitch a game instead of a publisher. But what was nice, if we go to one meeting and we get to hear about like 5 or 6 different games from different publishers. So that was really cool. Of those meetings, one of the ones I was excited about is Popcorn, that's coming from ELO. This is a game about making the most successful movie theater by doing things like upgrading your seats, getting the right movies in, and keeping your customers happy. It's also a bag builder where you're filling the bag filled with different meeples, and the different colors represent the type of movies they wanted to see. I think that one's a Gen Con release.
That sounds right. It looked good. I am interested to play it.
That's one of those That's one of those game names, though. That, man, did you really look? Did you look at the list on BGG before you picked your board game name?
Maybe it has a subtitle to it, like maybe it's Popcorn, the movie making game or something, and I'm missing it.
That is possible. We also got to see a very cool expansion for King of Tokyo, Luchador. Luchador is a new monster, which is kind of cool. And now all the expansions actually come with their power-up cards, which is awesome. But the cool part is this adds an entirely new way to play all of the King of games, a mask battle. And it actually comes with cardboard masks that actually fit on all the existing monsters, which I just thought was cool.
There's these awesome luchador masks, so you get to slot onto the top of the creatures. And they were sitting there in a pile out with this popcorn game. And as she's explaining popcorn to us, I'm trying to figure out how these luchador masks fit in. I'm like, they're going to talk about some genre of movie where we need to deploy these? What's going on here? No, okay.
It's separate game.
Separate game. So another game that they showed us was Zenith. I later played through it wasn't a full game. I played through several rounds of this at the demo hall, and I am so sold on this game. It's a 2-person tug of war kind of thing going on, and sci-fi theme, and I don't know. I just liked it.
If I remember correctly, that's 2 players or 2 teams. And they had an interesting way the players played at 4. So it's either 2 players or 4 players. That one's coming from Play Punk, which is not a company we have heard very often.
And it does not exist yet, but it was designed by some names I recognized, which I have flushed out of my brain in between.
Matthew Roussel and Gregory Gard, Grard, which are not names I recognize.
That doesn't sound right, because when she was talking about it,
I'm reading off Board Game Geek right now.
I disbelieve. I'll figure it out.
Okay. If we had recorded this when we had originally planned to record it before going to Adam, we would have gotten to break the news about the latest Lost Ruins of Arnak expansion. It is, for one, a big box that will hold all the Arnak and organizers, and great way to do it, as well as a whole new way to play with new maps and everything else. But I'm sure anyone listening to this has already heard about it, because, man, they are spending a lot of money on advertising on social media. So look forward to the new Arnak big box, which does include the latest expansion for Arnak.
It's Lost Ruins of Arnak Adventure Chest.
You talked over top of each other. It's Lost Chest of Arnak?
Lost Ruins of Arnak Adventure Chest.
Adventure Chest. Thank you.
And D,
all right.
It may be the artist that you were thinking of for Zenith, because the artist has done like Tokaido and Seasons and Lords of Zidit and Conan and like tons of stuff.
I think what it actually was Playpunk. Yes. Is a bunch of interesting people that have formed together to make that company. I think that's actually what was in my head.
It's Antoine Boisa, Thomas Provo.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 guys who
I think that was where I got it mixed in. Anyway, we take in a lot of information with not enough sleep over 5 days, and see what I spew out at the end.
We went to another thing in between. All right, this is a little story time, a little diversion here. If you do go to GAMA Expo before it leaves Louisville, it's there for 2 more years. Don't be lured by 4th Street. So last year lunch was provided and was on site, and this year we were on our own. So one time coming out of the bathroom, I guess I have lots of coming out of the bathroom stories, I spotted a Qdoba out the doors. I'm like, literally across the street. Awesome. So I'm like, next time I have to have lunch. That's where I'm going to go. So next time it's lunch, I go out, I see the Qdoba, I walk across the street to the Qdoba. From the Qdoba, I spot the Gordon Biersch Brewery. And I'm like, chain Mexican or craft brewery? Well, you know where Mo went. Went, had beers. Beers were good. Food was terrible. It was bad. But then I could see there was all these awesome restaurants on either side of the street just lining up. It was like restaurant after restaurant after pub after bar after pub after bar. I'm like, this looks awesome. And it was just like 4th Street Entertainment District. And there was a giant sign that said 4th Street Live. and there was a stage in the middle of all these restaurants. So I told Deanna, I'm like, I found this awesome street for restaurants. You don't want to go to the brewery, but there's lots of other stuff down there. So we went back for dinner. That's where we went.
Yeah. And I was thinking something about that sounds familiar, but I didn't bother to go back through my notes from the previous year. And the thing is, my brother's local, and he had basically given us a guide to downtown the previous year and had said, okay, 4th Street, it's touristy, it's safe. There's no reason you can't go down there, but you don't want to unless, you know, the drinks are okay. The food is, yeah, there's better places to eat. And I'm like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. You know, I should have just stuck to the list of places Gord told us to eat. Which,
yes.
Doc Crow's, go find that. It's yummy.
Yes. If you want Kentucky barbecue, go to Doc Crow's. Next up, another surprise, though it shouldn't be a surprise. Star Wars The Mandalorian Adventures from Fantasy Flight Games, and what they were specifically showing off was the Clan of 2 expansion. Now, I knew this game existed, and yes, I'm a huge Star Wars fanboy, but I do not try to play every Star Wars board game ever made. Though maybe I should, because this was amazing. This was fantastic. This is based on the Disney Plus series. The core box is Season 1. Clan of 2 expansion is Season 3. And yes, there's another expansion coming based on the next season. So that was Season 2, Season 3. Sci-fi, campaign-based. I'm going to call it a dungeon crawler, even though there's no dungeons. And I would say this is probably, for target market, the replacement for Imperial Assault. Because Imperial Assault, we did learn, is completely dead. Not only are they no longer putting out new content, they're no longer even producing Imperial Assault. So if you're missing Imperial Assault expansions, run out now and buy them before they disappear. This felt like Imperial Assault mashed with Gloomhaven. It used Frosthaven in a way, or Gloomhaven
Jaws the Lion,
because it used a spiral book for the maps. The maps were hexes and uses standees to present each scenario. Gameplay is about playing cards from your hands. Now, there are 4 actions, and you can play any card on any action to do the thing. You can move, you can attack, you can try to get intel, or you can plan. But if you play a card that matches the color, you get special things. So like I was playing Ahsoka, and I could play any card to move 2, or I could play my Jedi Leap card and be able to teleport anywhere on the map after moving 2. Because, well, not teleport technically, it was a giant Jedi Leap, but whatever. In addition to the 4 actions, some scenarios actually had additional actions. Gameplay was quick and smooth. It used custom dice to roll hits and misses and dodges. Characters were super asymmetric. Each had their own deck. There is a full campaign, which will involve improving your deck and adding new abilities. And I gotta say, I fell in love with this game. This game is fantastic. It gave me the Star Wars feel. It gave me the Mandalorian feel. I miss our Imperial Assault campaign. So this is one that I am definitely now hyped about, that I had no clue I was going to be hyped about.
Mo ran into me on the floor just after demoing this game, and he was giddy. He was bouncing. He's like, I just found a thing.
So roll for Crit Live. Thank you for this heads up from our chat. I guess it is very similar to, or at least pulls inspiration from The Initiative, which is by the same designer. I have not played The Initiative. We've mentioned a couple games from NVBorn. One of their latest games is Dragon Roost. It's still it's just past prototype. This is you build a stack of wooden blocks based on randomly selected cards. It kind of looks like Jenga, but there's some like funky discs and stuff in there. There's going to be 3 cards on the side with different colors of baby dragons, and a unique tool is placed next to each of these. Each turn, you're going to pick a tool to manipulate the block tower. And then there's a mechanism for not taking the same turn twice in a row or whatever. Now, the interesting part here is you're not pulling one from the middle and stacking it on top. Instead, you're not necessarily even removing the pieces. You're kind of trying to pull them out. And what you're trying to do is make roosts for those baby dragons. So you're trying to make like branches sticking out, bits of the structure sticking out that you put a baby dragon on. Now, interestingly, this is a cooperative dexterity game where you are working together to try to save the babies. And if you manage to place all 3 babies, you then do this go cuckoo-like thing where you have to put the mother dragon meeple on top of the whole structure without it collapsing. If it collapses, you lose. If you get the 3 babies and the dragon, you win. The weird part about all this is it's very, very tiny. The wooden sticks kind of are like Catan roads, and the tools are like tweezers and a little tiny wooden hammer that's like the size of my thumbnail. Now, I did learn from Matt, the CEO or head of NVBorn, is that originally the game was pitched to the company that did kitten and tinder blocks. So they were going for that tin size, which I guess makes sense. Now, I know that MV Born is considering a larger version, and I'd be really interested to see if they go bigger, because with my big sausage fingers, it was a little too fiddly for me.
No, this is just a no, not for me.
Fun, interesting fact. Did you know Restoration Games went through a painstakingly long design process to make sure that every single land vehicle in Thunder Road could be stacked on top of every other one? Neither did I. No, I didn't get to play the game, but I got a very good overview, and I am really impressed by how much they improved the original, and I now want this game more than I did before. Next up,
None of you wanting that game does not shock me. You've been talking about it for years because you had the original and we played
Yes.
the original, and yeah.
Still have the original. Oh, they did a lot. There are a lot of improvements. Next up, a highlight for the show for me, and this one's from Greater Than Games. We talked about it a bit earlier. We can at least talk about it, is Compile Main 1. There is now a Compile Main Set 2. I got to play Compile Main 1. This was my first experience with Compile. Compile has a lot of hype out there, and it's 100% justified. This is the best two-player dueling game I played since Sorcerer, and before that, Ashes. You are two dueling AIs. You make your deck by drafting 3 keywords. Each keyword has 6 cards associated with it. So you're taking 18 cards, and that's it. Your deck's 18 cards. The one full game I played a Metal Darkness Hate deck, and my opponent was Fire, Psyche, and Life. Now, the keywords are in the middle, and you're trying to form columns. Each turn, you play a card from your hand into one of your 3 columns, then run the program on the cards. Some cards have lots of text, some have little. All of them also have a number. The second time you play, though, in a column covers up part of the programming on the card above it, and there's a neat thing where if the card moves away, all the programs go off again. The goal is to get at least 10 power in a column and be beating your opponent at the start of your turn. You then compile all cards in that column, you flip your keyword over, and the goal of the game is to flip all 3 keywords. Now, the fun part is all the interesting programs that are doing things like flipping cards, letting you play extra cards, moving your keywords, and so on. I don't want to get into more detail, but I would love to. I could talk about this game for half an hour. I want this game. This game is fantastic. I need a copy of it. I would have bought a copy if it was for sale.
Yeah, I did not play it. When you described it to me, I'm like, sold. Give me the game. I want to play.
So a game I didn't play, but was very curious enough about to sit down for a few rounds of other people playing, was Dungeons and Dragons Builders of Baldur's Gate. From what I can understand from an email conversation later today, the pictures on Board Game Geek will be mine. So that'll be kind of interesting. This is a D&D Euro game that is a step up in weight from Lords of Waterdeep. It's about city building, faction loyalty. So you've got faction loyalty tracks, and defending sections of the city against monsters. This one's coming from WizKids later this year with plans for a Gen Con release. This was literally the first time it was shown in public, so there's not a lot of info out there. And like I said, the fact that WizKids reached out to me to ask if they can use my pictures is actually kind of cool.
I sat and watched people play the Galileo game, Galilei, or I can't say his name.
Galilei.
There you go. Which is from Capstone, and it looked just delightful.
Yeah, that one was on my list of interest.
I didn't get a chance to play it because I think they played through an actual full game, which was on the longer side, or at least it seemed like it was the same people sitting every time I came by to take a look at it. But yeah.
Well, Sean, we'll get to play that one because we did bring a review copy home.
Yeah, that was my pick.
Awesome.
We were given a choice of games from Capstone, and I said, may I please have that one?
Yes. One interesting bit of news I picked up during the Ops Premiere presentation is that Telestrations is getting a new printing. It is coming back, all 3 versions of it. What's important to note, and this is very important, if you already have it, you don't need this. There are no changes. They haven't even added new cards. It's just a new look and a new lower price point.
Oh, that is
good to know. Smaller box. They're doing the thing we talked about earlier to compensate for everything going on in the world right now. But the important thing to note is if you own Telestrations, there is no need to go pick out the new printings. This is hopefully, it's got a new modern look. to hopefully get more people into the game. So everything we talked about at this point was actually just open game nights and meetings and stuff. So this was actually before the exhibit hall opened. For that, we did have the pleasure of getting an early look as part of the media and events arm of GAMA. This wasn't just for hosted media. You just had to be media events for this. And that started at the Horizons Fellowship members. Now, we talked about this earlier. The Horizon Fellowship is an awesome mentorship program for minority creators and retailers, which concludes with the participants getting booths at GAMA Expo and Origins. Now, I'm just going to call them out. I'm not going to talk too much about each individual game, but I think they're worth noting so people can look up for more information. So on this guided tour, we got to see Defy the Gods, a smoldering queer swords and sorcery RPG from Hectic Electron Games. That's dope, a party game for strong opinions, which, while it wasn't for us, I could see being fun with the right group. That one comes from Black King Games, who also had this cool board game newspaper zine thing called Sunday Club that was created to be sold in game cafes, and we thought would be awesome for our Walkerville game nights. We did bring home a sample copy of that. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I thought the whole they were talking about their party game, It's Dope, and I was like, yeah, okay, it's not for me. And then they're like, oh, we also have this other thing that, it's just thing, and it's not as exciting as maybe that's dope. And I was like, no, that's the exciting part. Continue speaking about your Sunday Club paper. They're like, we took all the parts out of the paper that you got excited about waking up on Sunday, and took out all the news and just left all the fun games and crossword puzzles and searches and stuff. And they went on to explain that they actually have people that have worked for newspapers developing games for them, and that they're offering free copies to game cafes and stuff just to get the word out there. And they're doing a lot of cool things, and it looked cool. I mean, I did bring home a sample copy. Yeah. I don't think they're willing to ship to Canada, though. No, unfortunately.
Their goal is to be in every game cafe as like
and
a
I
newspaper
think it's
you
a
can pick
very
up.
cool idea.
Next was a totally normal game about frogs and crabs in a bucket, and a new expansion for crabs in a bucket called Shrimppocalypse from Blue Rondo Games. Now, Crabs was their first game released in 2023 and is a shedding card game. Next was Diatoms, which we mentioned many times earlier. They were as part of the media first look, but the publisher was also showing off their newest game, Uh-Oh Dino, at their booth, which had a unique mechanic of earthquakes and extinctions that actually had people try to shake the table, stomp on the floor in order to knock pieces over.
So it's a kid's game, and it's got these really cute dinos where the eggs notch in and ride on their backs. For Oh Dino. That's yes. Basically what I caught from. I was playing Diatoms at the Open Gaming, and Oh Dino was being played to my right, and I was watching some of the shenanigans going on over there.
Yep. Next was Kittens versus Corgis from Pet Domination. That is the publisher. A card-driven party game where the world's cutest pets battle for social media supremacy. The final fellow of 2025 was Starlight Grove, which was there promoting a large number of inclusive and gay-focused RPGs. The two that stuck out to me were The City Must Burn and The Things We Become.
There was one called something like Masquerades where you picked roles. Yep. That was a single shot RPG that they had. That one looked interesting.
One of the games our fans asked us to check out after my shares on social media was Leviathan Wilds. I guess was a hugely successful Kickstarter, and you could only get it through Kickstarter. Well, I'm pleased to announce All Play has picked that up. So All Play will be publishing Leviathan Wilds, and you will be able to try that and pick it up in retail. I know people are excited about that. No, I did not get to try it myself, so I can't say any more about that. Time Lancers look neat. Has some mechanics that reminded me of that This Didn't Happen card game we reviewed, where you could go back in the past and flip over a card and it would cause everything in the timeline after it to also flip. Except this was like a much more polished Euro style game with some night components. Looks like it had a good depth to it. Again, the exhibit hall was big, like 90 seconds per booth at the most, so we did not get a chance to try it.
Yeah, I was intrigued by that one.
Next, a quick look at the Stonemaier version of Tokaido. They did pick up the license of Tokaido from Funforge. The basic gameplay is exactly the same. They did make some minor improvements, like the scoring track now makes sense to most humans. Character abilities are now listed on the back of the character cards. There is new art, but the gameplay hasn't changed at all. Another game that had no gameplay changes that I want people to know is the new 6th edition of Catan is identical. There is some new artwork. There are some minor component changes. For one, the roads are smaller. And there are some user upgrades like a card holder for the resource cards. But the game is still the same. If you have previous editions of Catan, you don't necessarily have to rush out and get the 6th edition. But it is fully compatible with all of the existing expansions on the market now.
It is just quality of life upgrades. Yeah,
Yes.
I was curious, so I that's why I bothered to go over there and find out. I was curious what they would have changed, so it was good to know.
We got to see off some cool stuff from Hachette that's coming out. I know many people have played the micro macro games. They're like interesting deduction puzzle mystery games using very busy maps. Well, what they're doing is they're doing a jigsaw puzzle version of this, which actually they pointed out how you're probably going to start with the frame and trying to build a jigsaw from there is going to be hard. You're going to actually have to use clues on the frame to figure out what to place next. The version we saw was called Fun Fair. So that was pretty neat.
They explained how you would want to figure out where the person was and follow their path around, and that would help you be able to build the puzzle and also solve the mystery at the end. So that sounded pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounded cool. We did get to see the very pretty new version of Cyclades, the new Legendary Edition, which looks really cool. Tag Team looks like a great game for anime fans. Architects of Amidus, I'm not sure exactly how this pronounces, a 2-player architectural duel game with a tic-tac-toe element. Yes, a modern publisher did a Euro game that uses tic-tac-toe in an interesting way. We actually took a copy of that home. And we also took a copy of Corridor Pac-Man home, which I really wanted. So I'm excited to bring Corridor Pac-Man out to our public play events.
Architects of Amatus was my choice because I had done an overview of it during the open play game night, and I like 2-player games, and it looked like fun.
Now I'm going to call one thing out. I did note that this was Hachette, but Hachette is also a distributor now. So many of these games I just mentioned aren't Hachette games. They're games Hachette is publishing. So, for example, Corridor Pac-Man is Gigamit.
Not publishing, distributing in North America.
Distributing in North America. So Corridor is Gigamit. Amidus is actually Boîte de Jeu, and so on. When we have links in the show notes, you'll be able to find that information. A slight disappointment, Avatar Journey of Aang did not live up to my expectations. There is a lot of flair in this game. The game was very obviously kickstarted with a lot of stretch goals, and it's very pretty, but it is a very simple game. This is an A+ kids game for people who are fans of the series. I was kind of hoping for a Avatar Euro game. That's not what this is.
Yeah, seeing it in person, nothing about this called to me.
Super Boss Monster looks amazing. It's a new updated version of Boss Monster with everything you love about the original, but has a whole new town mechanic where you can build up the city and go visit the temple, the stadium, and the library between rounds. The big thing, though, that we saw from Brotherwise is the Mistborn deck builder. I do not, unfortunately, have the name of the person we talked to. If Dee has it, you can shout it out. But we got an overview and literally sat there and went, I know nothing about Mistborn. I have never read anything by Sanderson, but I love deck builders. Please talk to me as if I'm 3. And we got an awesome overview of the game. And of course, the big focus here is on building up and burning elements, collecting elements, then burning them to activate your cards, which I guess is very tied to the Mistborn books. One thing I liked in this game is there was multiple ways to win. You can do the dueling thing and just defeat your enemies directly, but you can also win by rushing and completing missions before your opponents do. This is one I am really looking forward to exploring deeper.
Yeah, that Mistborn game looked fascinating. I also want to try Super Boss Monster, but so I'm kind of excited about that. But the Mistborn one was a surprise to me because I had no clue I was interested in it until we had that discussion at their booth.
Now, Citrus was on my GAMA hype list, and honestly, instead of taking time to learn more about it, we already have a really good relationship with Good Blade Publishing, and we just thought our rep, we knows the games we like, and said, hey, Kim, do you think we'll like this? He said, yes, we'll like this, and he handed me a copy. So looking forward to discovering that one on our own. Personally, the theme's got me, right? It's the Battle Angel Alita style of game where you've got a bunch of renegades who live on the surface and crash drops from above, and you're trying to fight your way up into the cities where the rich people live, which just looked like a really cool theme.
That game confuses me every time because I keep thinking of Cyprus, which was a really bad experience we had years ago now.
Yes. Yes, that is a different game. Here's an interesting one. This seems to be a trend of Mo and D going to cons. Someone forces us to take a game home. This particular time it was at the PSI booth. It is Pillbox Games. It is Hex Effects. It is a follow-up to Side Effects. It's a card-driven party game. It's a take-that game about trying to cure your personal hexes through the play of remedies, but every time you play a remedy on itself, it has side effects, which opens you up to players playing more hexes on you. I got to say the aesthetic of this is fantastic. It looks awesome. We're going to have to play to discover if the game plays for us.
Yeah, the whole turn of the century quack doctor thing and the art was lovely. It had a nice aesthetic to it. I was amused by, you're curing this hex, but opening yourself up to other stuff. I was amused by it. So, yeah, looks interesting.
And it is a re-implementation of Side Effects from 2017 from Pillbox Games.
Yeah.
Deanna and I both got a short demo of the new Pathfinder Quest board game. I think people are going to be hyped about this. I think this is going to be good. This was another one where I got the demo of the game, but then we went out on the floor and I saw a much better looking version. And I actually talked to one of the heads of Paizo who overheard me talking to the demo team person and going, why don't we have the good version of the game on display at game night? So that was kind of funny. This reminded me of a mashup of old school Hero Quest and the Pathfinder beginner box, like the actual RPG box. Like it's got your Pathfinder iconics. For anyone who knows what that is, it's a set of NPCs they use in all their stuff, or PCs, I should say, not NPCs. It's got a series of quests forming a full campaign and has all your leveling up and everything. But the basic gameplay is D6 dice instead of polyhedrals with stuff like hit tokens on them, which is where I got that Hero Quest feel. What I really liked about this is it wasn't just a dungeon crawling combat. We started outside a tavern and there was stuff going on. Like there was a horse panicking and there was a weird sound over in the corner. And we got to split up and explore things and do this like exploring, making skill checks things before we hit the key thing that started a combat. And you don't usually see that in dungeon crawl style games. Like even Imperial Assault, my favorite dungeon crawl, is just here's your combat. Here's where your enemies are. Go. There was a lot of neat stuff going on. This was only a prototype, but I think this is going to be a big deal from Paizo.
I like the skill checks. It had a delightful, I'm actually playing an RPG, but it's a board game kind of feel. I really dug this one and can't wait to play it again.
And I got to go for huge props to the person on the demo team. They did an awesome job, and I apologize. I cannot remember your game right now, but you were a delightful human. I think it was Rue, but I might be wrong.
I think it was Rue. That sounds familiar.
One of the things that happens every year at GAMA, the Op throws a retailer party. This includes food, open bar, and every year they play a massive game of Blank Slate. Now, we've gotten along with the Op. We've been working with the Op. The Op is one of the first major publishers to send us a review copy. Thanks, Ross Thompson. We love you, Op, and because they love us, we were actually invited to attend, and I played. And I got to say, Blank Slate with, I don't even know. So we're sitting at tables of 8, each with a copy of Blank Slate. Off staff member would yell out the clue. We'd all fill out our boards, put our hands up. Then we check for matches and scores. The first person at 25 points got a prize. And then there was a final round with 8 players from different tables squaring off. I have never heard so much laughter in one room before. Now, it wasn't open bar. Maybe that had something to do with it. But everyone just had a great time. Our particular table was what had the initiative. And we had our hands up first. And every time like, oh, my God, that table's ready again. We were also the only table that not once but twice didn't get a single match. So I got to say, it was a fun experience. I got to really get to know some of the people at our tables. This game, I will warn everyone, will go blue if you don't try not to. Playing the game later when we got home with my kids was a very different experience than a bunch of retailers relaxing at the end of a con. Like this was one of the final events. It was a great way to unwind at the end of the day, get to know more people. Also, at the end, I got to take our copies home. So you'll get to see this one at Walkerville. Definitely. This is going to be a hit for that style of event.
So Tuesday night, instead of going to the open gaming night, I went to the DEI mixer, which was great. I got to sit and meet lots of cool individuals and have lots of great conversations. But that meant I hadn't got to try out as many games on the game floor. So Mo went to the op party.
Yes.
Well, I went to the open gaming night because I wanted to go find everything I had missed on day 2. Well, no, it was actually day 3 at that point, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I don't know. They all blend together. Another fun story. I played Ascension Legends. This is the latest version of Ascension against a true pro, someone who actually helped playtest the game since they played like 50 times and I only lost by 2 points. But I gotta say, like, I haven't kept up with Ascension. We got like the first 4 expansions. I played on the app for a while, but I kind of stopped paying attention to the game. And this was a ride a bike moment. Like, oh, it just felt good. I like Ascension. I always have liked Ascensions. This new version has an all-new market deck, of course. It has multicolored cards, but no events for anyone who's been following around. The big thing is a new Legends track, which features 4 Legends cards, which are randomized at the start of the game, 1 for each faction. And it's an influence track. And every time you buy a card from a faction or defeat a creature using combat of that faction, you move up the track. Every time you crossed a threshold, you got to activate the leader's powers. Plus, there was a thing for how far you got up the tracks, you got to have powers. And that was awesome. What I thought was interesting too is it really affected what cards I wanted to buy. Kind of like Star Realms did the groundbreaking thing of you wanted to collect the same colors to key off powers. Well, sometimes it encourages you to stick to just a few colors to get really up those tracks, but then there was an advantage to diversifying. Best moments when you buy a card to advance a counter just to trigger an ability, which was fun. It was just a great experience.
I love Ascension, so I'm super excited about the fact that it's our anniversary this year and we get to talk it up a bit.
Yeah, so that was the other thing I learned. Stoneblade pointed out that this is not part of their 15th anniversary, but they have a lot coming this year for their 15th anniversary. They just teased that, and they want us to be part of celebrating it, which was the positive thing I like to hear. Oh, on the exhibit hall, we checked out React: The Arts of War. This was almost a disappointment to me. So this is a highly thematic 2-player battling game that's anime expired with awesome characters. And note it's the arts of war because it has to do with artists battling each other. So one of the characters has a brush instead of a katana, and they summon ink spirits that advance and attack, but they can also use their thing to cast spells with calligraphy. The demo they had set up was against a DJ who had these big 2 spirit speakers. You would move across the board, and then where they intersect is where they do damage. And then the other thing is they had a deck, mixing board, and they would switch which records they had up to set up different abilities. Super asymmetric and very cool, but unfortunately only self-published. And it was one of the awkward conversations where I'm like, I don't know how we can help each other.
Also, and I'm kind of against the whole one and done thing in board games, right? But this was the opposite. He went on to explain how this is a game you can't really play until you've played it 5 times. This is a game that you can only play once you've figured out mastery. Otherwise, you're just making a fool of yourself. And I'm like, I don't have the time to put into that game right now.
Yes.
It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing.
Yes. We did get a sneak peek at the new bots for Robot Quest Arena, but they were just prototypes and they didn't have the new cards. That's still under development. That's one I'm looking forward to see at Origins. The production version of Star Realms Academy looks awesome. That's Star Realms for kids. Pack the Essentials. A lot of people are really curious about. Looks very cute. We did not actually try that one. We did bring home the Star Realms Legacy game, which I am hyped about. I don't know when we're going to play through the campaign, but it looks awesome. You're putting stickers on cards and there's new factions and awesome stuff. Star Realms Empires, it's behind me. But I got to say, the most unique game we saw from Wise Wizard Games was a roll and move game with similarities to Snakes and Ladders. And I don't know what it is with this con and game. So like we saw tic-tac-toe and now we're seeing Snakes and Ladders. This is called Push Push Penguin. It's a race to slide down the iceberg and get out to sea. Each turn you roll 2 dice and decide which one will be the one you use to move. So there's already a decision point that's not in the original. Spots on the board include things like move back or hitting a slide and sliding further down. And some of those spots will let you move other penguins, like send someone else back. Well, at the end of each round, you're going to roll a die and advance an orca, which starts at the end of the track. And I don't know how much biology or geography you know, but orcas eat penguins. So this is what makes this game work. The first penguin to meet the orca gets eaten, then second player wins the game. And that makes it a real game with real decisions and deciding what dies. Sometimes you want to go slow, sometimes you have to go quick. And I was fascinated by this. No, we did not take a copy home. I think it's a little lighter for our usual game nights. Might have went over well at Walkerville, but I'm like, someone at Wise Wizards was trying to make Snakes and Ladders fun, and I think that's admirable.
Yeah, it's an interesting angle, and I think like one of the designers, it had multiple designers listed on it, but I think one of the designers listed was Tam. So
Yep.
I'm like, yeah, so I'm like, that was interesting to see. As someone who usually makes more heavier, intricate games, doing a retheme, a redo, a retool, I should say, of Snakes and Ladders basically is just kind of interesting.
Now, Roll for Crit Live in our chat actually calls out they played Push Push Penguin, and the final rounds become hilarious. We should have grabbed that one.
The designers on it, Tam, David Gordon, who did Floristry, and Christopher Ryan Chan, who did the Night Cage. I mean, these are real designers making Snakes and Ladders.
All right, I'm going to criticize the game here. I was going to avoid this. The main reason I didn't take it is the cover art. I would put that at the Walkerville Brewery, and except for the family that brings their 5-year-old kids, no one would touch it. I think they overdid the kiddie look on the box. That is where I think that game failed.
Well, I think you're right. I'm actually I looked at it briefly before when you guys talked to me about it, and I've actually got it blown up on a big screen now and not on my phone. And while the penguins are cutesy, the actual expressions on their face are very not. Like the actual expressions on the faces of the penguins does not say kid to me at all.
Okay. But I at first look, right? You got 50 games split out on the table in front of you.
But I got that the first look when I looking at it on my phone, just, it's definitely, but then now that I look at it in big, I'm like, no, that doesn't actually feel as kiddie as I thought it did.
It'll be interesting to see the reviews and info on that game as more people get to try it. One of the games on our list to check out was Viking Root. That's the game that uses a compass and magnets, where you got like an ocean and you put the ship is your magnet. The compass is your ship, and the magnets are actually Odin's ravens, and you're manipulating Odin's ravens on the outside of the board to move your ship. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So you're using magnets that are affected by the ravens to move your ship, and then the game also features a very cool 3D Viking ship to hold your crew and your minis and your cards. And it was embarrassing because we're getting the overview of this game and I'm taking pictures and actually thought it was 2 separate games. So I had to retake all my pictures zoomed out. I'm like, oh, that's part of Viking Root. Again, the exhibit hall floor, there was just no time. I would have liked to have heard more about the game, but I will say I'm more interested in it than I was before attending.
That one was actually on my short list. I knew it was all part of one game. I was going to correct you at some point, but the guy was talking to us. There's just neat things going on there with the whole magnets, and there's a compass and it reorientates based on where you're moving your guys around. It's just, there's some neat things going on.
Now, running out of time, I barely got a look at Freedom 5. This is one Sean wanted to know about. What I can say is it looks fantastic. It's got all your standard Sentinels of the Multiverse characters. I totally recognize the villain that was on the top of the deck. Features multiple scenarios and a great looking map. There's a ton of meeples in it. It's got a really nice box insert. Sadly, Arcane Wonders was not doing demos of this, so they didn't have this out at game night. So I just basically got to see the board kind of split. The board wasn't even out. It was like the box was splayed out. I got to say it looks good. This is the follow-up for Defenders of the Realm, which is in a pandemic-based game. So this is a cooperative hero game about stopping villains in the Sentinels universe that like, for what we got to see looked really great. I am really hoping they'll have this out at Origin so we can try it. Earlier, we mentioned 25th Century Games did not make it to the media first look, but we did get a lowdown on what they were putting out. One important note, the Raw expansion is only compatible with the 25th Century Games version of Raw because you're pulling things out of a bag and the tiles are a different size. It does look like a cool addition. Vanity Plate, Sean asked to check out. Sounds like a really solid party game. More going on than I expected. What's neat on this is you're not just like getting a clue and everyone has to draw it. Instead, everyone's given their own clue. But the neat part is you're also given a card that tells you specific letters you must include. And I'm like, wow, okay, that makes this harder. So it's not really bumper stumpers, and it's a lot more involved. We also managed to convince that Deanna actually wants Wine Cellar, and it's not just a quick party game.
Conservas, which was on my short list to check out, did not disappoint me. That's a solo bag builder from 25th Century Games that looked just as good in real life as I thought it would. Wine Cellar was a surprise because I thought any game that you can play in 10 to 15 minutes, I'm probably not that interested in, but there's some really interesting mechanics going on there, and also you can play that as one round is 10 minutes to 15 minutes, and you're actually playing a 3-round set. Once he actually showed us the gameplay, I was like, all right, I'm sold. I want to try this game.
Yeah, and there was something like when you play the 3-round set, your wine ages. Like it wasn't just you play 3 times and add your score.
Yeah, there was some cool stuff going
on. I know it was on Kickstarter, and probably everyone else noticed it, but I get so many Kickstarter notifications I missed. I should say crowdfunding. I'm not even sure it was Kickstarter. There's a new version of Lord of the Rings: The Confrontation, which is really cool. Like that's a classic Fantasy Flight game that's kind of like Strategio. This is it was a game found, and it was an Ultimate Edition. This looks so good. They rebalanced the gameplay. There are some rule changes. What's interesting is this is the company Ghost Galaxy that brought back Keyforge. So I guess that's their new thing, is bring back old dead Fantasy Flight games. They're like restoration games for Fantasy Flight. Speaking of games being brought back by other publishers, Talisman is back. That's not the big news. It's now under Avalon Hill and Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast. They had a new expansion called Alliances. And what I thought about this is instead of republishing the various Talisman expansions that have been out for years, they did something totally new. So I thought that was cool. The minis look great. I'm a long-term Talisman fan, so that was exciting to me. And speaking of new expansions, as Deanna mentioned earlier, Smug Owls has 3 in the works. There is Pompous Owls, Poser Owls, and the mandatory After Dark expansion, Smut Owls.
So those are available to retailers as of the day I saw them. They had just arrived off the boat, and one of the neat features of Pompous Owls was that there was a definition for all the fancy pants words on the cards where they use them.
Now, the final thing that happens at GAMA Expo, it's kind of legendary, is the PSI After Party. PSI is another distributor who represents a lot of companies, including our sponsor, Grand Gamers Guild. This is where publishers they represent host one final game night showing off their games. There's food and drink. There, I got to try out Creature Caravan from Red Raven Games. That's set in the Red Raven universe with art by Ryan Lockett and game design by him, like Near and Far and Above and Below. This is a lighter game. Well, lighter not with a light theme, because your home city has been destroyed and you are traveling across the land trying to get to a new city. You're attracting followers and trying to avoid zombies. Now, this looked really cool, and you get a bonus content here because we did miss an episode. I actually got to play this at Adam last week. I'm going to save that to talk about during our Adam recap.
And with that, teaser, let's wrap things up.
So before we go for the night and wrap up the end of the show, I just want to reiterate how great a time we had at GAMA Expo. Thank you, GAMA board members, for inviting us there as host of media again. And I want to thank everyone who interacted with us and making it one of the best board gaming experiences we've ever had. We met so many awesome people. We got to hang out with old friends. We met new friends. We conducted some business, and we learned a lot. We've come home with visions on how to better ourselves and become better gaming ambassadors, as well as improve the show. I am hyped about where we're going from here.
3,000%. Everything he just said above. I'm also going to say I know we missed games when we were doing this recap, and that doesn't mean that we didn't like them. There is just so much to see at GAMA Expo. So if you just keep an eye on our socials, we're sort of weird in that we don't do things in real time, and we'll be dripping it out over the next, I don't even know how long, but you're going to be seeing that stuff coming up on Instagram and Facebook. If you follow us, you will get pictures and descriptions of some of these games that we didn't manage to fit into tonight's episode.
And the best place to follow us now would be Blue Sky. At tabletopbellhop.com is our username there, because we are verified on Blue Sky. Yeah, please don't take us not mentioning your game to mean we didn't like it. It's midnight. We have been talking for 4 hours here. We would love to cover every little element of GAMA Expo, but then we just become the GAMA Expo Gaming Podcast, which just isn't quite the same.
We could.
Well, that was the double bell.
That means our shift's coming to an end. We got to shut down the exhibit hall. We got to send everyone home. Head back to the Galt House and enjoy your after parties.
Before we start booting people out and locking things down, let's take a moment to thank a selection of our Tabletop Bellhop Patreon patrons. Ron F., thank you, Ron.
Brian Van Beek, thank you, Brian.
William Fisher, thank you, William.
Thank you, Andrew Dacey.
Danielle and Owen Thomas, thank you for your support.
Sean P. Kelly, thanks, Sean. Well, the best place to find us online is at tabletopbellhop.com. You can also find us on most forms of social media as the Tabletop Bellhop, one word, and on your podcatcher of choice as the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast.
No, not the Tabletop Bellhop, just Tabletop Bellhop. If you've enjoyed our coverage of GAMA Expo, please let us know with a thumbs up, like, or better yet, share our comment. Comments are always appreciated, and it would also be awesome if you let someone at GAMA know if we helped convince you join or attend the show. I was amazed by how many people said your content last year is what got me here. That is amazing. I love to hear it.
And if you really like us, you can also show your support by joining our Patreon or by buying us a coffee. Head over to patreon.com or ko-fi.com/tabletopbellhop.
That's all for us tonight.
For the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast, I'm Sean.
I'm Deanna.
And I'm Mo.
Thank you.
And
game
game
on.
on.